Over 1,100 players signed up yesterday, and we are narrowed down to just the best 16 here today at Royale Masters Gold Edition. Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Guy. Joining me, as always, is Joshua, AC, Sharon. Josh, before we start to break down the tournament, let everyone know all the ins and outs, the inner workings, and how they can be here. Talk to me a little bit about yesterday and how you felt about some of our players, 3 of which went undefeated in sets.
Yeah, you know, a lot of players played quite well, and there was a few players that struggled quite a bit. There was a couple players that were already out within the first couple rounds that I really had a lot of hope for. Some of those players, you know, Doom, Air Surfer, you know, even though he was 6-2 and he still technically had a chance, if you look at the win rate and just the opponents that he was going against, he really never had that shot. So you can't afford to lose in those first couple sets. So that's going to be something that a lot of players are going to have to worry about. And then, yeah, some players went 8-0, and that was very, very impressive. Yeah, I was expecting 1, but we got 3, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was fascinating to kind of see those early stumbles really affect you later on in the day. And like you said, people like Katashian, LCOP, great players, Air Surfer, were just outside of that mix. Let's take a look here at our tournament format. This is a general overview of our open qualifiers all the way through our finals. And AC, we are halfway through the very first part of this graphic.
Absolutely. Qualifier 1 was, you know, we did 1A basically. And then today we have 1B. But overall, we have 3 qualifier weeks. That's going to be on Saturdays and Sundays. And then we have 1 wildcard open for the final top 4 placements. And then for the first 3 qualifiers, you want to just build your points, try and make it to have, try and have it so that you have the most amount of points. And then those top 8 from the first 3 qualifiers and the wildcard will move on to the playoffs. Playoffs is where it gets crazy. Playoffs is where you can get that golden ticket.
That's right, and those golden tickets are getting narrower and narrower by the day. Let's take a look here at the Royale Masters dual format. It's one of our favorite formats in the game. I love it. It was introduced to us last year, and it's definitely one of my favorites, if not my absolute favorite. So the way that it works is it's regular dual format, best of 3. Today it's going to be best of 3 single elimination all the way through the day until we get to the last match. The grand finals is going to be a best of 5. But the difference in the duels format is if you win with a deck, you can no longer play any of those 8 cards. However, if you lose with a deck, you can reuse any of those cards. You can copy and repeat the same deck right then and there. If you lost in game 1, you can play the same deck in game 2, which means the champions should probably be in every single one of your decks. As we work through our qualifiers format, you talked about this a little bit just a moment ago, Josh, but if you guys want to see a more intimate breakdown, this is how every single weekend works. We're going to be with you guys for all of July. Day 1, like I said, 1,100 players signed up. The top 16, the top 4 from each of the groups, A, B, C, and D, move on to today, which gives us our total of 16. Then on day 2, we get a single elimination bracket, as you guys can see, but the finals will be played in a best of 5. So a lot of information coming your guys' way. The best way is just to keep joining us every single week on Saturday and Sunday throughout the entire month of July to work through our open qualifiers all the way through our grand finals, where AC just said we are giving away a golden ticket. But Josh, we're not just giving away a golden ticket. We're giving away quite a bit of gold as well.
That's right. The playoffs is going to net you $25,000 total dollars, $10,000 on a golden ticket for first, $6,000 for second, $3,000, $2,000 for third and fourth. And look, even if, you know, you make it to the playoffs and, you know, your phone dies, you can't make it, you know, your iPad dies, whatever you play on, you know, you're still walking away with that $700 open qualifiers, which is going to be, you know, what's happening today. The first place prize winner for today is going to walk away with $2,500, $1,500 for second. And again, if you made it to these, you know, these playoffs, you're still walking away with cash. You lose every single game. That's all right. $100 in your pocket. Wildcard open on the other side. $4,000 combined. $1,200, $800, $400, $200 for first, second, third, and fourth.
That's right. So let's take a look here at our bracket. Remember, this is the top 16 players, 4 players from each individual group. Our 3 undefeated players on the day yesterday were It Hurts, which actually ended up being trainer Adnan, someone that we haven't seen in a while, but a very good player. Furkan Arabachi, he is going to be one of our other players who was perfect. And then, of course, Chief Keef down there on the left-hand side. The way that this is going to work in our round of 16, we're going to be watching just one of our matches throughout the day in the first round of 16. Then we'll be catching all the quarterfinals, all the semifinals, and of course, you guys will be watching the grand finals with us. That matchup in our round of 16 is going to be Furkan Arabachi versus CMG Mini. Furkan, perfect yesterday, great deck selection. He was able to weave his way through this Royale Masters dual format, use it to his arsenal as opposed to being stopped by it. CMG Mini, another great performer in Group D. He ended up in 4th place, just barely squeaking in. Any thoughts about this matchup specifically, AC, before we hop into the action?
Well, I'll just say this. If I go 8-0 and then I have to go against Mini in round number 1, I'm pretty upset. I mean, Mini, look, not only did Mini go 7-1, but he did it in the group of death. So, yeah. Like, you know, Pandora wasn't able to qualify. Yusuf wasn't able to qualify. These are phenomenal players. I think Group D was definitely the strongest overall. So the fact that he went 8-0 and he gets rewarded with CMG Mini, that is a brutal task for him. But at the end of the day, he went 8-0. He's the one that Mini has to be watching out for. He expects to win it all. So it really doesn't matter. It was the Celtics versus the Nets. You know, you don't want to be going against the Nets, but they swept them. So, you know, we could be seeing that here.
So here we go. Mini Minter top of your screen. Furkan at the bottom. Furkan looks like he could be going to the Electro Giant. And Mini might just be playing minor Tesla Control. We'll see as more of these cards come out. Could be a really nice matchup for Minis. You see this early Earthquake coming in, trying to get as much damage as he can in single Elixir. Probably already recognizing the matchup that he's seeing. And as you talked about, man, Group D was truly the group of death. Even just looking at the top 6, Katashian, Yusuf. Right below that, Omar, Inaraj, Guero. These are all guys. Ian77 was in this group. So CMG Mini coming out, getting that 4th place spot was quite the task. And like you said, usually you want to be rewarded when you get that #1 seed that Furkan got. But this is a very, very tough out early on in the bracket. Bomber gets just enough value there on that Tesla. Nice placement.
Yeah, beautiful placement. I did not expect that to work out for him. And right here, this is the reason why that E-Giant Mirror deck is so powerful. Mini coming out with the laughing face. Yeah. Furkan coming out with the crying. Game might already technically be over in one push. An E-Giant followed by an E-Giant. That shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you recognize the overspend from your opponent. You can play the first E-Giant defensively. Then they have to overspend again defensively to try to take out the E-Giant on their side of the board. Then you drop that second E-Giant down with the mirror. You can see that's cards 5 and 6. And just like that, as you said, AC, game pretty much sewn up.
It really makes me wonder, you know, at least against Furkan, you know, if you should potentially, and that's actually a pretty huge misvalk. It really shouldn't matter too much because the game already, you know, looks kind of locked up, but you just can't be making mistakes at this point. But yeah, you know, if you're going against Furkan, you have to think maybe the right answer is going to be something like Inferno Tower instead of Tesla in these kind of decks, just because, you know, you can't afford to just lose a game outright in one push.
Now, do you believe that's just because E-Giant is as strong as it is when you say to be looking out for something like that, so you play Inferno, or do you also just think because we've seen Furkan kind of cater to or lean towards heavier decks?
Yeah, it's definitely player dependent when I say use the Inferno Tower because, look, the Tesla is a fantastic card. It does well against all matchups. Inferno Tower is going to struggle against some matchups, but you just have to recognize who you're going against. You know, that's why you have analysts. You got to make sure that you're prepping yourself perfectly.
100%. So that's going to be an easy game 1 win here for Furkan. Obviously, this is still a best of 3. Mini can pull off the reverse sweep. It happened a few times yesterday. And as we were just talking about how great Mini's group was, let's take a look here at Furkan's group. Not quite as difficult when you talk about the players that he had to go up against in general, but there were players like Air Surfer was in his group, Schwatzen was in his group, Han the Eternal was in his group. And then, of course, when you look at the other players that qualified from his group in Titan, Alexi, Fedez, Alexi had a 75% win rate. Titan had an 82% win rate. So there were some really strong players in this group in general. But like you said, it really did seem like Group D was the group of death. And hopefully that death just means that there was incredible competition as opposed to the results of Group D's performances today in the finals. Tough matchup there. You know, it is one of those situations where, like you said, maybe you play something a little bit stronger in terms of a building to help deal with the fact that Furkin does cater to stronger decks, heavier decks. But when you found yourself in that matchup, if you were mini AC, was there really a way out of that, considering how the first minute went?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, usually with these E-Giant mirror decks, it's you E-Giant and then your opponent defends it however they defend it. But then they still have, you know, 30% health, 40% health on their troops. Right there, the first defense, it was a Tesla and an Archer Queen. And the Archer Queen was fully healthy. So there was no, like, the troops didn't die off. It has everything to do with how strong the E-Giant is when Tesla is the only building. Because even though the Archer Queen was fully healthy, he still just threw down another E-Giant. He stacked the bridge. He kind of misplayed Bomber. The Bomber took a shot, and so it only was like a log away, and it didn't matter whatsoever. The HP, the level 13 E-Giant, it was too much for him.
Yeah, you talked yesterday specifically about the Giant Skeleton kind of making up for mistakes defensively, offensively, maybe just overcommitting, whether it's in either direction. But that Giant Skeleton going down, the Giant Skeleton bomb doing all the cleanup really goes, okay, cool. So I might have made a 3 elixir mistake, but I just cleaned maybe 5 or 6 elixir off the board, or I made it so that that elixir coming across the bridge can be countered with 1 or 2 as opposed to needing to spend 4 or 5. It's pretty similar when you know how to play the Electro Giant. It's such a strong offensive card that people forget or underutilize at lower levels the defensive capabilities. Obviously, at the highest level, we see what we just saw in this game, the recognition for commitment and going right with that aggressive Electro Giant. So, still one of the strongest cards in the game, not quite as popular at the highest level, but still having great effect here today as we see an early use here of the Archer Queen again from Mini Minter. Remember, he did lose game number 1, so any of the cards that he ran, he can run back. He can run the exact same deck. Forcan on the other side of it, he does have to change things up. He could be going to Mortar Skeleton King. Ice Spirit, usually a Fire Spirit in that situation. So, obviously, in game number 1, using that card, he had to change things up. We'll see if that's still the direction he wants to go in.
Cannon cart going to be placed on defense, and this is the Hog deck that I really like. This is actually something that I was going to bring up and then just genuinely forgot. So I'm going to talk about it right now. We have the Giant Skeleton with the Hog and Archer Queen, so it's basically just another Hog deck, but this time it's well balanced. You can't get overwhelmed with the E-Giant because you have that Giant Skeleton that you can plop in front. So this is the variation that I would have liked to see him in game number 1. And so in game number 2, it's almost like you could have just repeated game number 1. And it's interesting to see him use this variation when E-Giant is out of play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially because this is the Hog Rider deck that has been the most effective at the competitive level. We've seen versions like what we just saw out of CMG Mini. We've also seen versions where they use the Firecracker instead. The Firecracker version here at Royale Masters, at least this weekend, did okay. A lot of people didn't have responses to the Firecracker. But for instance, last weekend, in the tournaments that we were casting, we were able to see that the Firecracker version just isn't as effective. So there's a reason why this specific makeup for Hog EQ is the direction that you want to go in. I just think it's a little interesting how regularly we see people try to go back to things that used to work or that feel like it should be as effective. But I couldn't agree with you more. This is the deck that you want to play.
Both players relatively even as we head into double elixir, and that is probably going to favor a Hog deck that has a fairly quick cycle when you have the Earthquake with it. Just depends with those last 2 cards. That's going to be a nice pre-log, and that will be a Musketeer. So I love what he did right there. Archer Queen forced out, Archer Queen in the poison, just brilliantly played right there. And Yeah, that's exactly what he needs to be making. I was going to say it's like heavy in favor of the Hog player. At this point, he kind of just flips the script and it's going to be, you know, anybody's game at this point.
Yeah, you really do have to make those heads-up plays when you're in this matchup. As you can see, still getting overwhelmed is Furkan. Doesn't have anything in the tank to deal with this Hog. Gets a last-second mortar down, which is nice for him to avoid the Hog getting on tower. However, the Earthquake cycle does get good value there. Cannon Cart will still have some legs, so we've seen Ice Spirit come out to try to support the Cannon Cart to deal with that Tesla. Miner going to go to the back. Nice catch there with the Giant Skelly, and then we see the offset of the guards to avoid that log. So nice adjustment there by Mini Minter.
Yeah, everything is going Mini's way. This is just the deck to be using. Giant Skeleton somehow, some way found its way into the meta, aka Muhammad Light, you know, did some... I don't know how Muhammad Light did it, but Muhammad Light found so many Giant Skeleton decks. Everybody had kind of just sort of given up on the card, and we see why that was a mistake from everyone. This deck is so good, it's so strong, has so many different counters. The guards plus the Giant Skeleton, it's hard to get past that duo.
And then you see right there what happens when the Archer Queen stays on the board in that deck. You can avoid the Giant Skeleton. You can cycle those smaller cards, those cheaper cards, and get another Hog Rider out instantly. Felt like Furkan was kind of on his back foot that entire game, his deck being a lot heavier than Mini's. I do have to ask you, I don't know if you know about this, Josh, is there a little bit of bad blood between Furkan and Mini? There was BM in both games there, some laughing at the end of game number 2. Any thoughts on this? Any insight, or is this just a little bit of friendly competitive jabbing?
You know, I really want to know, like, you know, man, I really want to know. I want to go back in time, see if there was like you know, a quarterfinals match where somebody reverse swept and that's the reason for it. Because you're right, I didn't really pick up on that, but there was a little bit of emoting thrown around.
You know, just a little bit, not too much, not like quite what we saw to King Joao yesterday going up against LCOP, but still definitely some going. So now we have an interesting position that we find ourselves in, guys. This is best of 3. This is Royale Masters, so that means the dual mode, like we talked about at the top of the show, means that there's only 2 decks that are unavailable, 16 cards, 8 from each side. Mini wins game 2, so he cannot use Hog Rider, he cannot use Archer Queen, Earthquake, Giant Skeleton, all those cards that you just saw out of him, whereas Furkan can go right back to Mortar if he wants. But looking at Furkan's battle log, he's been playing a lot of Royal Giant, so this goes back to the conversation of, does Furkan go back to something just a little bit heavier in game 3? I don't know if that's the best idea, but also then when you watch him play Mortar, he didn't play that matchup too poorly. It was just not a great matchup in my mind.
You know, he didn't play it too poorly, but he didn't make any crazy plays.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what you need to do with Mortar. Sometimes you need to, you know, everybody learned how to do the Skeleton's cannon placement, where you can cannon in like Hog mirror matches, and then you can push the Hog opposite lane so the Earthquake doesn't get value. You can do that with Mortar as well. You can push using your troops, and that way you can get offensive mortars going. And so he didn't swap lanes, he didn't do anything, he just kind of got overwhelmed eventually. And the way he was playing, it was kind of obvious that that would be the case. So he didn't play perfectly, and that's really what you need to do. Like we talk about how strong Mortar is all the time, but you need to play perfectly if you're going to be beating players of this caliber.
Yeah, that's, I mean, some really, really great points that you make there, AC, especially about having to make innovative plays in regards to where you're placing that mortar to avoid the Earthquake value time and time again. Then if the Earthquake doesn't get value, you're more comfortable to cycle cards in the back to start building up a better defense that can turn into an offensive counter push in your weaker of the 2 lanes. So, yeah, some adjustments that needed to be made by Furkan. We saw that there was some good heads up, you know, logs, but there was really only the one, and he didn't get a lot out of it. So Mini now may be going to maybe a little too early for me to try to decide what he's going to with only a couple cards played, Inferno and Lightning, and then Furkan might just be running it back.
Yeah, I think Furkan's running it back, and I think Mini's using E-Giant. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the variation that he tends to use, and we see the Mother Witch as well, definitely heavily leaning towards that right now.
Yeah, Mother Witch really came back into the meta. She got that slight buff in her hit speed, and then also just kind of finding her place in meta in terms of how popular the Giant Skeleton is, and how popular the Skeleton King is, even though Graveyard isn't out there a lot. Skeleton King and a lot of Swarm units have been very popular, so a really nice early Cannon Cart connection here for Furkan, and he's going to keep up the pressure here. Mini doing the correct thing, and just kind of eating all of this damage. He's going to probably try to get an E-Giant down in front of this Inferno, maybe right at the bridge. We're about to get into double elixir. So he'll have an Inferno Dragon, a Goblin Brawler, and an E-Giant for this push. We'll see how Furkan wants to defend.
We see the defensive poison, the defensive mortar, and nothing else. So we know the lightning is going to come down. Everything is going to go to the mortar. Skeleton King comes down just in time, and that's not going to be a problem. He's down 3 elixir, but that first defense is always going to be the scariest. If you can defend that first defense, you're fine, and then you're going to continue to defend pretty well usually. And then once triple elixir happens, that's going to be that one other really, really strong push that you have to worry about. Right there, defends it very, very cleanly.
So Furkan trying to spread his units out as best as he can, but the NATO will pull it all together, and you add in that great Golden Knight dash, gets a connection. But Miner on the tower going to bring that below 800 HP, 742 to 1981, and now this should be a pretty much coast to the finish line here for Furkan. Nice Skeleton King ability there. Mother Witch comes down a second late, and this could get dangerous. We'll see how well Furkan and how aggressively he wants to defend. As you can see, that cannon cart placed up high, saying, I want no business with an E-Giant coming down.
Exactly what you should be doing, forcing the pressure. Cannon cart almost gets the lock, but the cage comes out just in time. Nice prediction, NATO. If he doesn't predict that, game would have been over. At the same time, game's probably over. He can mortar in the middle, and that's perfect. It's going to be going to the king, or to the crown tower. BM coming out once again. Golden Knight not in time.
Yeah, I don't know what it is between these guys. You know, a lot of the time we know if there's some bad blood going on, but these two, because I think Furkan has been so quiet in the competitive scene at the highest level. I mean, obviously, when you look at his profile, it's incredibly impressive. But at the highest level in competitive, he hasn't been as much of a force as Mini has. So I don't know about maybe the history that's going on between them, but as you can see, Furkan happy to take that best of 3. Mini maybe not so happy about the way that it went. Great deck selection there from Furkan. I love that he went back to the same deck that he just lost with, recognizing the cards that were no longer available, and then maybe looking at the matchup he would probably most likely run into. You know, there's a lot of lightning value on the board in terms of the cannon cart, the musketeer, and the mortar. Maybe thinking, all right, lightning is probably going to be a spell, whether he goes E-Giant or whether he goes Royal Giant. This could be the best way out for me. Really, really great use of our duels format.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's, you know, we get to see it be utilized in best of 3s. Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier in best of 5s because that's when you're really throwing out a bunch of cards. But yeah, it's always fun to see it in a best of 3 where the Royale Masters edition comes to fruition. Like this is what it's about. You worry, like you recognize this isn't in sight, or you know, this isn't possible. I can repeat because he's going to think I'm not going to repeat. And you know, I feel a lot of nostalgia when I watch these kind of matchups, or when I watch these kind of matches, because 5 years ago, 4 years ago, the game was played in a way where you play one deck and then you repeat it like 7 of your 8 games. Like that, yeah. That was how competitive it was. People didn't, you know, counter correctly. They didn't, you know, there was only 3 good decks in the game. So to see that again, but actually in like a positive way where it's intelligent instead of you only practice one deck, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, the era of the one trick is definitely over, but at least in this format, you can lean on your favorite archetype or your favorite deck at least once or twice, which is something you can't do in normal duels format. Let's take a look here at our bracket. We let you guys know a bit ago that we were only going to be looking at one of the matches in our round of 16, so the other one's all moving on forward. A couple more still getting sorted out. The Lost versus Trainer Adnan, who is It Hurts. The Lost had the highest win rate, I believe, coming out of yesterday. I think he was up at an 87% clip, 87.5%. for his win rate yesterday, so really impressive there. Betfa's 2-0 one of our undefeated players in Chief Keith. Inthrill able to take out Cal Sub. Cal Sub was really impressive, but Inthrill was 7-1 with a 71% win rate. Pandora waiting to see who's going to win between Cal, Alexi, and Hugo from France. As you can see, a couple Cal players in here. One of them still in the mix. One of them is going to be eliminated already. So We are narrowing down our 16 down to 8, as AC said at the top of the show. Everyone's still going to get $100, but getting through that very first part of the bracket is really, really not only important in terms of prize pool, in terms of points, but most importantly in terms of confidence, right? Yesterday was a grueling day. They're going to have to come back week after week for every open qualifier because they're going to want to make sure they do it off of points. And yeah, a great start to our Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And not a ton of surprises. I think if I had to expect I probably could have predicted most of them. I think Titan was one of the ones that I expected to kind of flip, so that's very well played from Ascended. And then Pandora, that's going to be one of those guys that like I want to watch as many games as possible from him, because that man is so, you know, mechanically sound at this game, and it's just I'm happy that he was able to make it there and throw it with a beautiful King Tower interaction.
I was just gonna say that was about as on top and heads up as you can be with a King Tower activation against a drill, and this is already our first match of the quarterfinals. We will be watching every single match from here on out, so ain't no rest for the wicked. Down with one, into the other one, out of the frying pan, into the fire. And Inthrill going with a Goblin Drill, Magic Archer, NATO combination with that Golden Knight. Top of your screen going to be Goblin Drill Wall Breakers with Skeleton King. And as you can see, Betfus and Inthrill, they figured out the equation here. Every single game you play should have a champion in it. There's no reason not to. The worst case scenario is you lose that game and you get to reuse that champion, maybe to more effect knowing then what is out of cycle for your opponent.
Wow, and this is a very interesting variation. We see it with the giant skeleton, and I don't know if I've seen that before. I really like the idea of that.
It's definitely getting a little bit more popular. There was kind of rumblings of it a few weeks ago, and then I even heard Rich talking about it today. He's overcasting that DreamHack event, and he was saying that he saw this. He's seeing this variation pop up more and more. You understand why Giant Skeleton, incredibly powerful to have up front. You can get him tanking for you as you send in troops behind, and that is almost a perfect Golden Knight dash. But one wall breaker does connect. And I think the last thing to add in about this deck specifically is that it does, with that Giant Skeleton coming down the lane, Giant Skeleton's always the #1 priority so that it can let you set up for great Magic Archer lineups.
Absolutely, yeah. I love the synergy with it. And yeah, I'm glad to see it be used. I really like Giant Skeleton metas. You know, it's a lot safer than Barb Hut metas. It's a lot safer than Eagle metas.
Yeah.
Giant Skeleton is just kind of a fun card. You know, even though it is strong, even though it is like painful to play against, it definitely feels a little bit healthier than some of the other meta constricted cards.
Yeah, and I think it was a really nice adjustment that they made. I think that Giant Skeleton Bomb for it getting on tower was so punishing before that the card felt, I don't know, it wasn't really broken because it wasn't being played too much, but I do really like the adjustment. That's another great NATO there from Inthrill. Doesn't get the connection on top of the Princess Tower on the left-hand side, but Royal Ghost does connect on the right. But Betfa's still doing an incredible job just controlling this game. 1664, the Dark Goblin's getting a lot of value. That Skeleton army was just a step late, but he has been doing a very good job of protecting the Dark Goblin. And Inthrill having to eat a lot more damage on that right-hand side as he sets up Giant Skeleton in the back going the opposite lane.
Yeah, I don't know if he expected to take that much damage. Not really what you're looking for. Fireball gonna come down, take out the Magic Archer. The dash will come in from the Golden Knight, retargets onto the Ghost, and Giant Skeleton is just not gonna do enough. That, you know, the reason why Giant Skeleton isn't necessarily great is because it can get slowed down by the P.E.K.K.A.s, the Inferno Towers. It's very strong, but it does have its weaknesses.
Yeah, 100%. One of the easiest cards to kind of kite around the board. And this is what we're talking about with the lineup. Magic Archer behind the Giant Skeleton or Magic Archer behind the Cannon card. So effective there. As you can see, Inthrill definitely closing the gap a bit. Goblins will get on tower 1089 to 871. In a game that felt like Betfus was completely in control of for the entirety, it's starting to go in favor of his opponent just a bit. That wall breaker, though, getting tanked for, so an Ewiz has to come down. Dark Goblin takes the Giant Skeleton down to about a third of its HP. 639 remains.
Dash will come out, and he goes to the tower. Oh my goodness.
That is a massive connection. Giant Skeleton Bomb goes off in the opposite lane to deal with the Dark Goblin. Nice recognition there by Inthril, not overspending. Now going to need to get something up high on top of the Fire Spirit. Ewiz does come down, and another drill in as Wall Breakers have to come out as the best defense. And the NATO work from Inthril from the beginning of this game has been, it was a masterclass in tornadoes.
Yeah, I mean, even the one, I think there was like one tornado that I was like, that he messed up in, and I was shocked that he messed it up. I thought the interaction was good. That's the, that's the problem with these Golden Knight interactions. Like, sometimes it's difficult to see. He brings the Skeleton King up, but I think it was like just 0.08 tiles too low or something like that, and he doesn't get it. But it doesn't matter. He cleans up his gameplay, defends perfectly. Oh, my tower isn't targeting the wall breaker. Let me get an Ewiz down. Even though I know it's 4 elixir, I know this is the play that I have to make. Everything was calculated for him. Mistakes were cleaned up.
Yeah, the Electro Wizard was so effective in that matchup. You need another spell, you need a zap, you need another log, you need a Barb Barrel to clean up all those skeletons that are coming in, Wall Breakers behind, and the Electro Wizard was able to do all of that and more, turning it into, pretty negligible counter pushes. But the fact that you're able to get that Ewiz down on top of skeletons that are coming in, a Dark Goblin behind, and then Wall Breakers, that is such a great use of the Electro Wizard, which is a card that's been kind of middling in terms of competitive play. We've definitely been seeing less of it than we have in the past, especially because Bridge Spam and Ram Rider haven't been as popular. Obviously, Giant Double Prince is something that is kind of non-existent and has been for a while. But those are the decks that you would see Ewiz in a lot. And then watching it kind of find a place in this deck, I really like it. We like the adjustment with the Giant Skelly, but also the Electro Wizard really came out in spades today.
Yep, absolutely. That's definitely okay. So, and I'm hearing.
I was like, I hear the game coming. There's the X Pro and you coming alive. You hear the game sound start. You're like, all right, I gotta stop talking. I gotta focus.
So Inthril gonna be running Skeleton King, Skarmy probably, and then Mother Witch followed behind. So Fireball will come out. That's, the reason why we love the Royale Masters format. Uses Fireball game number 1, uses Fireball game number 2.
Yeah, so RG, probably bottom of your screen, top of your screen, going to most likely be Mortar. Betfus has a lot of great answers. He's got the log to knock back, tons of single target DPS with the guards and the bats, but he's going to obviously have to be careful about how aggressively he plays those cards, looking for that Mother Witch always. And then the Mortar, going to be a good way to keep that Royal Giant at bay. As a Mega Minion cycled in the back by Inthril. Player out of Poland.
And Betfos needs to make sure that his Musketeer is getting plenty of value every single time it gets placed. He has really no answer to it. And so a Musketeer plus a Giant Skeleton is always going to be extremely difficult to worry about when you don't have a Fireball. And it's just hard to take that out. Right here, this is a really solid push for Betfos. This might not necessarily work out just yet, especially when the Fisherman pulls the Musketeer. That was really solid for him.
You see that Mother Witch getting a ton of value.
Wow.
Going to turn this into a great push, and Betfus calling out the good luck. This is not the situation Betfus wants to be in. This is single elimination, and this could be the end for him already.
Oh, wow. The Fisherman pulling the Musketeer was really nice for him, and just nothing was able to take out the Mother Witch. You have to be aware that the Mother Witch, if it's getting value and you have no Fireball, it's taking towers. And so kind of surprising to see him place the bats too high instead of just placing it under the Giant Skeleton, basically. Just allowing him to have an easy chance to take his tower down low.
Well, those are the literal 2 points that you and I were talking about. The first one was that there has to be a ton of Musketeer value for Betfus, but then as we saw, the Fisherman pulled it away. Not great for him. And then the second part of it was how aggressive can he be with those swarm units in the bats and in the guards. And another great interaction for Inthril with that Mother Witch coming down. So both of the key points that we were making about what Betfus needed to do and what he needed not to do, he kind of did the exact opposite. And Inthril definitely capitalized. Earthquake Cycle coming in. No reason not to start doing that. 380 remains to basically 2 untouched towers. 2936 being the lowest here for Inthril. And you see Betfus just piling up at the bridge, trying to do everything he can to protect that Musketeer.
Yeah, these Skarmies are getting so much value. Yes, they're getting, I mean, they're getting 2-3 elixir worth of value just by itself, but then it's also just allowing the Skeleton King to get that ability going. He doesn't have to worry about anything. It allows him to log it off, Earthquake the Musketeer, just brilliance, you know, throughout the game. And Earthquake should be coming down shortly, and there we go.
I was gonna say, Bethphus finally builds a push worth paying note to, but it's a little bit too late as Inferno is able to pick up both of those games with relative ease. 2-2-0. Bethphus being eliminated after having an exceptional day yesterday. 78% win rate, 7-1 in sets, and he beat out a lot of great players in his Group B qualifiers yesterday, but just didn't have the stuff here today. That Mexican player has been exceptional on ladder for a long time. Bethphus known as one of, if not the best Expo player currently in the game, but just not able to do it here against Inthril, who has been really, really great today and yesterday.
Yeah, it's been amazing because I haven't seen too much of him. We don't see him all that often in the bigger competitions. And so this is kind of like an introduction, you know, not only for me, but like I'm sure a lot of different people watching.
Yeah.
So he's performing really, really well. And it's not like, you know, it's not based off matchups. It's based off solid gameplay. Those two games we watched and, you know, some of the games that we watched the other day, it's just very, very good gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, heavy lies the crown in terms of if you're expected to play really, really well, everyone's watching every single thing you do. You have more spectators. Everyone's expecting you to come out and just dominate the entire bracket. That can get in players' heads sometimes, unless you're Mohamed Light. But then the other side of that coin are players like Inthril, who they know they're exceptional. They know that they have the game locked down, micro and macro, and they don't have as much pressure on them, especially in a matchup like that where Bethphus is a bit of a more popular player because of the ladder accolades that he has. Inthril gets to come into this kind of as the underdog and just go, all right, let me show you my stuff. Let me show you that I do belong here. I did make it for a reason. And that is going to do it for our first part of the quarterfinals. We're going to keep working on through. Furkan, bottom of your screen, ascended at the top here. And you can see already a nice King Tower activation with that Fish Boy. Tombstone coming out, looking like Royal Giant.
Fish Boy and Tombstone, that's going to be very difficult to have the Hog actually get through, especially with the Zappies as well. So already we're seeing the recognition from Furkan. Maybe the best decision is to go in with the Earthquake cycle, so he chooses to do that. This is going to be kind of an interesting push using the RG in front and then the Skeleton King behind.
Yeah, and RG ends up not getting a shot. Really nice defense there. Valkyrie doing a lot of work here for Furkan, going to make it so that Skeleton King ability is a lot less exciting to play. It's one of those cards that it doesn't matter how low the Valkyrie is. If you're on their side of the board, and even if you have a full Skeleton King, you do not want to have to use it just because the Valkyrie counters it so easily.
Can the Hog get the shot? It does not. Fisherman played it quite well. So that's a 7 elixir push, defended with 6, but a very healthy Fisherman. We should see the Skeletons played, and that log, you know, you could think about hesitating with the log, leaking a half elixir, and then potentially trying to get the pre-log on top of the Skeletons.
So Ascended, a player out of Kazakhstan. Best accomplishment on ladder was being a 555 finish. No real achievements. We saw him show up in the Europe, Middle East, North Africa version of the ESL Snapdragon Pro Series really recently, a couple months ago, back in May, where he finished in 24th place. So, you know, you talk about Inthril being maybe just a little bit well-known, kind of building a name for himself. Ascended maybe finding himself in the shoes of where Inthril was at the beginning of the year in 2021, depending on how he can play now against one of the best in the game and definitely one of the best in our tournament.
Really solid defense, really solid offense from Furkan. I mean, this player is it's special to watch him each and every time, and it's really enjoyable that not only does he play well, but he also just every competition he's there, and so we get to see him all the time. This gameplay has been really solid. There was a time where I was thinking, oh, he might overextend with the Hog. I don't know if he has enough elixir. And then what do you know? He waits, he gets the right push going, he cycles the Fire Spirit bridge correctly. I mean, everything he's doing in this game is just beautiful. And this isn't a heavy deck. This is a cycle deck with Hog.
Yeah, and I really love that Earthquake there last second on that last end of his offensive push. Furcans. It was able to clean up the skeletons from that giant skeleton, or from the Skeleton King, and on top of that, help whittle down the other units ensuing, so it made the defense just have to be a Fire Spirit. So, like you're talking about, interactions on point here for Furcan is going to take one Royal Giant shot in the opposite lane. 1750 now to 2455, being the weakest of the two towers now, and Archer Queen comes down to make sure that that Mother Witch doesn't get too much value on top of those skeletons, and of course that Valkyrie going down.
Yeah, not a huge fan of the way. Oh, and that's unfortunate for the Archer Queen to be targeted right there. Hog will not be able to get the shot. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that he put the Mother Witch up top. It really wasn't going to get a lot of value. It was able to snipe one of the skellies, but then immediately went for the Valkyrie. So yeah, I don't want to see that from Ascended again.
Yeah, I mean, and Ascended, you know, you understand it in part just because there's not a lot of other units that you're going to get value from the Mother Witch, but I agree, you got to still pick and choose your placements with her, because when she's in the back of those big pushes, it starts to get a lot of value on panic defenses. That's really where she's best utilized in this matchup, knowing that Fireball is not part of the equation.
Wow, this gameplay so far has been phenomenal. He's not going to be able to protect the Archer Queen because it will get that last shot, but this defense, it just makes it so that it doesn't matter. Fire Spirit gonna come out, try and get the dash on top of it. Valk to mitigate the damage from the Hogs. I mean, this is just perfect gameplay. He's up by 1,000, 30 seconds left. I don't think we're gonna see another Hog. I think we're just gonna see straight up defense at this point.
Exactly, and there's no reason to change that up. You know that Ascended has to go hyper aggressive here, so you can see Furcan just piling up at the bridge. Now he sends in another Hog Rider just because there was a bit of an overspend. No pull from the Fish Boy, distracted by the opposite lane. Fire Spirit connects, Log connects, Hog connects. Second Hog Rider comes down. 603 Earthquake in. Ascended just hits the what was it, double tap swipe there, as he's gonna reset before he goes into the next game. Beautiful, beautiful stuff from Furcan in the first two sets.
Yeah, there were no mistakes in that game. These players are pros, but these players tend to make mistakes. It's a difficult game. You're going fast paced. There's so many decisions you have to make right there. No mistakes, top to bottom. He never overextended. He always defended his skeletons with the Valk high. He swapped the Valk protection on the skeletons from the left to the right, so he could never just Mother Witch one certain angle. I mean, everything was perfect.
Yeah, and you talk about trying to get on top of that Mother Witch with, you know, earthquakes or logs and all that. Furcan very, very patient, waiting for either Valkyrie splash damage or the Archer Queen to put in work for him there. And it just a great recognition of the micro and the macro. The micro interactions were so perfect, and then the macro understanding of the game, like you said, there's no reason for another Hog Rider to come out until there was that small window with the Valkyrie and the AQ coming across the left side. Hog Rider goes down the right. Fish Boy's distracted. Earthquake comes in on top of the Tombstone. Just beautiful stuff, and I do have to commend him again on that Earthquake that we saw earlier in the game. It was the very end of his offensive push. Everything had died on the vine. Skeletons coming down the lane, Skeleton King coming down the lane, but that Earthquake, that last second grab, was able to clean up half the skeletons, get a little bit more chip damage on top of that Skeleton King, and then the Fire Spirit came down. And the reason that was so impressive for me was in how quickly the Earthquake came down. It almost looked like Furcan was hovering it just as this could work out if something happens. And that's something that we talked about yesterday, something that you pointed out. The best players in the game, once the push is over, or once the initial reaction is over, they're thinking about what's the next smartest 2-3 plays for my opponent to make, and also where are these units going to go? What's going to be the result? How many skeletons are going to be left on the board? What's the cheapest way to clean this up? And it felt like Furcan was processing all of those factors on the fly with absolute perfection.
It was beautiful. Furcan, there was someone that we were watching the other day that I was saying, oh, Schwarzen. Yeah, Furcan is definitely moving up on my list of best players to watch, most fun. I'm gaining respect for him every single competition. Yeah, you know, I think after this competition, I'm definitely gonna make it a mission of mine, even when I'm not casting, even when, you know, I've got the day where I can actually sleep in on the weekends or something. I'm gonna be trying to seek out his gameplay. It's very, very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very versatile. I really enjoy the deck selection we've seen from him so far today. You know, we saw Mortar a couple times. We see the changeup here in this second set. And now we're going to hop into game number 2. Can Ascended take a game off Furkan, and will it be an easy 4-0 run for him to get to our semifinals as the cash keeps stacking in Furkan's wallet? Will the gameplay stay as perfect? Ascended going to go to Expo here. Expo, very, very interesting. This is one of the really, really popular, really annoying, incredibly fast cycle decks. A huge amount of single target DPS, and the last thing you ever want is to fall down an elixir and then have to overspend on an Expo, and they're able to clean it up with a couple spirits and a log. So we'll see just how Furkan wants to play against this matchup. Luckily for him, he is a guy that plays a ton of ladder, ton of competitive, and this deck was very popular for a little while.
See, I was wondering what the final cards were going to be. The cannon cart does make his mission quite a bit easier. Shouldn't be the most difficult thing in the world. The mini P.E.K.K.A, that he's going to be able to stack pumps, stack expos, and that will be difficult for him. Wow, chooses to tank that mini P.E.K.K.A, and that's exactly what you should be doing. You don't really have to worry about your opponent kind of just getting a lot of chip damage at the very end. You know your opponent is going to struggle in that aspect.
Yeah, they're just going to really lean on those Expo connections, which is why you can see Furkan going, all right, you want to get me a little bit of chip damage with a Fire Spirit, a log here and there, even a mini P.E.K.K.A connection, no problem. I know what you really need is Expo connections. So all this chip damage, it is stacking up. It is something that Furkan's going to have to be aware of. But now we see an interesting adjustment here by Ascended. I like this change here. I like that he goes defensive Expo. Now a Poison can't cover all the ground that it needs to. Will a Miner go to the pump? No, Miner instead goes right to the tower. This is one of my favorite plays in the game when you're running Miner Poison. You go Miner on top of the tower, you poison the pump, and that way if your opponent tries to over-defend, you get a lot of value and some tower damage from your Miner plus the Poison.
Wow, Cannon Cart is going to lock onto the Expo, will be able to fully take it out, and the Archer Queen has already popped its ability, so this push is dead, and all of a sudden it goes from Ascended up 18 Elixir with 2.5 pumps on the board to nothing. The Miner Poison has put in so much work. The defensively placed mortars that were placed, you know, before the Expos were placed, so that way he wouldn't be able to set, you know, the correct pushes up. I mean, he's doing everything right once again, and it's a little bit easier with this one. Cannon Cart plus Zap is just difficult to get past if you're Ascended.
And I was just going to say, I guarantee you on the next Miner send, Furkan is going to go to the pump and not to the tower after going to the tower twice in a row with poisons. And that's exactly what Furkan did. So the mind games are afoot here in our quarterfinals. And I really, really love that from Furkan. He's changing up his Miner placement. He's changing up the Miner poisons. He's changing up Miners to pumps or Miners to towers. It's exactly what you need to do because it makes your Expo player not ever have any ground to stand on. They're always on their back foot, which you never want to be in when you're playing Expo. Expo is all about completely controlling the game, completely controlling the elixir, and Furkan, like we were talking about, being a great ladder player, being an excellent competitive player, you know he's played through the matchup time and time again. He's doing everything correctly.
This is so difficult to see because you never in your life do you want your Expo to be placed where the mortar is just already locked on. Like that just feels like it should never be the play, and that was how he felt like that was the only play that he could make, and that is a weird thing to see. It's just not something that we see often.
Yeah, I mean, he's continually having to drop these Expos on pre-placed mortars, and now you can see the sellout defense that's going to come in. Yeah, Spirit plus Skellies plus that mini P.E.K.K.A, Archer Queen in the opposite lane, but still, like you talked about at the top, Cannon Cart is a nightmare for Expo players. It has so much HP, it can snipe the Expo, and once again, we just see Furkan play absolute perfection, top to bottom, throughout both of these matchups, through all 4 of his games so far, 5 of his games, because Mini did take 1. Just really, really great stuff, man. I have nothing negative to say about what we just saw.
Yeah, and you know, it just I love the deck choice. I love how it was set up. It's not I can't remember the last time we saw a Miner Poison Zap deck.
Yeah, the Zap is actually a really, really interesting point that we didn't talk about.
Yeah, there were so many opportunities for him, and you know, that's why it was so difficult for him to defend his pumps, because if he wanted to defend his pumps, he needed mini P.E.K.K.A in cycle. And that is a tough ask, because you know your mini P.E.K.K.A is needed for the Cannon Cart, for the Musketeer, for the Skeleton King. So just to always be needing one card for 4 cards, you know, that's never really a good spot.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, that mini P.E.K.K.A needed to be so many other places on the board if there was ever going to be a connection there for Ascended. Furkan does it once again, perfect on the day, 2-0 in sets. I think he's dropped 1 game thus far, so he definitely feels like the biggest force to be dealt with. Now, as we talk about our next matchup, HireKun versus It Hurts. HireKun, you know, someone who I don't know that well. The name looks familiar, but it also could just because it has higher in it, and I know he's not that higher. But HireKun was in Group A yesterday. He got 3rd place. He got a 78.9% win rate, and he's going up against the best player in his group from Germany in It Hurts. But that is not It Hurts. I mean, it is It Hurts, but it's trainer Adnan, who at the end of the day, when we were able to finally find his player profile, this is a great player. This is someone who you've known for a long time. I think most people know the name of trainer Adnan in the game. And after watching his 8-0 run yesterday, absolutely no surprises when we were able to have that discovery on broadcast.
Yeah, that was such a light bulb moment. And it's, it made sense. And it had to be something that we recognized. But yeah, for it to be trainer Adnan, I mean, that man is incredible. I was actually in one of his clans not too long ago, and I can't remember if it was like his 2nd account or his 3rd account that he brought in, but he like mentioned it to a player, and the player kind of responded like, huh, that's your 3rd account? How? Like, you've got a 20 win, you've got this, you've got that.
Yeah.
What do you mean 3rd account? And the man is just so solid overall. I've known him for the past year and a half, 2 years, and you know, his gameplay has definitely been one of those. It belongs to a group of players that I can like truly learn from. And at this point in time with Clash Royale, I can learn from a lot of these players. But he was one of the first players that I looked at, and I was like, wow, I really need to, you know, step up my gameplay. I really need to be learning and improving.
Yeah, I was in the same clan for a while that he joined until I got kicked out for not doing my war battles, which is understandable, I guess. But I remember when he joined in, having the same thoughts that you're talking about, looking at his profile, being like, wow, this is not your main account. And then going, well, of course, this is trainer Adnan. So watching his gameplay for a while we were in the same clan, he was playing so much, grinding so much. And again, if that's his 3rd account, who knows how much time he was putting in on the other 2 that weren't in the clan. But it was really a joy to watch, like you're talking about. He was someone that, I think he was even playing Mortar at the time. So every single time he'd hop in game, I'd spectate just to watch the interactions. He's a very methodical, patient player. He's a very smart player. I also like the aggression that we saw from him, right? And that comes with confidence. When you know you're as good as you are, you can get hyper aggressive because, and this is something that I go back to Jack that said back at World Finals, you know, Jack 2.6 Hog Rider player. He was just like, hey man, when you know you can defend perfectly every time with less elixir than they're going to send across the bridge 10 times out of 10, you can get over aggressive on offense. You can have those confident plays because you're that confident in your defense. So all that being said about trainer Adnan, I think it's pretty clear who we think is the favored in this matchup. He was 8-0 in the sets. He was in the same group as HireKun. Kun on the other side of it, someone that I don't know as well. But if you look at the other people in his group, you know, he beat out Betfus for that 3rd place spot because his opponent win rate was higher, even though they had the exact same win rate. Bruzani was in that group. Lord Seb was in that group. Tuvia was in that group. OP Sam was in that group. So when you look at all these other people, Framcito, that were Ardentois. So all these guys, Surge TS, I'm just going to keep doing it as I keep seeing more and more of these players that were not able to make it through to where HireKun is. So while he may not be as known and maybe not as favored in this matchup, we just talked about that for Inthrill. It can do a lot and take a lot of pressure off your shoulders when you're expected to lose. Although we know in Clash Royale, there's pretty much never a situation where that is 100% going to happen, especially once you know, Mo came in the game. I guess that kind of changes that conversation for a lot of people, where it does feel like there's a 95% chance he's going to win any said set against any said player. But this matchup, while we do know trainer Adnan better, while it does feel like he is the favorite, I can't imagine this being that lopsided.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say this. I think Trainer Adnan belongs to a group, you know, Mo included, where they kind of remind me of like anime characters where when they're favorited, they kind of get like hyped up and amped up and they're like, "Yes, I can take on the world right now. Like give me the worst matchup. I don't care. I'm winning this." And that's like his attitude towards the game just reminds me of someone who feels like they are far and away the best every time they step on the arena.
So Hyrule yesterday, the player that he lost to was someone named Broken. And I think Broken ended up being pretty close to getting in that top group. Yeah, Broken was the 10th place finisher out of Germany in Group A. That was the only person that was able to take a set off of Hyrule yesterday. Whereas, as we've been talking about, It Hurts / Trainer Adnan did not find any stumbles. He was able to end that day perfect 8-0, being one of our 3 competitors that were 8-0 yesterday. And as you guys already saw, Furkan being the other one, and then, of course, Chief Keef, who was already eliminated. So 2 players that were perfect yesterday have still kept that run going today in terms of sets. Furkan now 10-0 on the weekend at the Open Qualifiers here for Royale Masters. And the other side of it, It Hurts or Adnan is 9-0 in sets, looking to make that a perfect 10 as well. And as we're waiting to hop into game here, take a look over here in the chat. I didn't see it yet, but just to stop anyone in their tracks that might say it, we always want to stop talking. We always want to hop into game. We never ever. So don't worry. As soon as we're able to hop in game, we will. But if you guys want to hop in the game, which is something I've seen a lot of people talk about in the chat yesterday, and I'm sure people have already said in the chat today, 2022 Clash Royale League is the era of everyone. This is the Royale Masters Tournament Gold Edition. Royale Masters kind of came on the map last year. Wallace was able to win that tournament, but was eliminated yesterday in our qualifiers. But you can join in. It's not just pros, even though it is the best of the best that came to our top 16. You are able to sign up for the Open Qualifiers 2 and Open Qualifiers 3 every single week throughout the month of July. And then you'll be able to get into those last chance qualifiers as well in that, I guess, 3rd weekend or 4th weekend since we started. Every Saturday and Sunday, we will be here. It'll be me and AC or me and Rich or maybe Rich and AC. We'll change things up for you guys, keep you on your toes. But if you want to join in on the action, follow Royale Masters on Twitter. Go join their Discord. That's where it's so much information is posted. They keep you on top of everything, making sure that you sign in on time. You're there for your brackets on time. That way you don't get a disqualification or a early set loss, which, Josh, that's something that you talked about yesterday that was and today at the top of the show. It is shocking how much losing early in the day affects your opponent win rate, which is really, honestly, other than your overall win rate, whether you're 8-0 and 7-0 or 7-1, that opponent win rate is so important. So it almost feels like the most important games are the first couple sets and then the last couple sets.
Yeah, you need to make sure that you're starting off hot. I always recommend, it was a major thing for Immortals and everybody, like, hey, on the Uber ride to the games, like, you guys need to be playing grand challenges. You need to be playing ladder. You need to be doing this. You need to be warming it up. I don't want you guys to really talk that much at the beginning of the day. Like, just play. This isn't the time to mess around. You got to get hot. And game 1 or set 1, set 2, those are really, really important. If you lose, we saw it with Air Surfer, we saw it with a couple of the guys, you can just be out just like that.
Yeah, Schwatzen and Air Surfer were definitely victims of that opponent win rate, keeping them just out of striking range. And it sounds like there's a player that's having a bit of an issue with their device, which is the reason for the delay right now. But don't worry, we'll hop into the action absolutely as soon as we possibly can. Someone in here is saying, hello, can you say hello to us? Yes, we can, Adrian. Hello to you. Thank you for being here. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. This is where all the Royale Masters action is going to be happening. And if you're not able to keep on top of the time, or you don't know what UTC is, you don't know what time it is Pacific time, just subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every single time that we go live, you guys will be notified when that happens. And as you guys saw at the top of the show, it's just a really quick rundown, then we hop right into the action. But, with DreamHack being live, with us being online, there's still always going to be issues with player disputes or player devices, what have you. Josh, no matter whether we're in studio or online, we cannot get away from it.
Oh, yeah, in studio, off studio, online, offline, LAN, non-LAN. It really doesn't matter. There's always going to be issues. There's always, but you know, that's one of the things we love. I wouldn't even want a competition without some of those problems.
Yeah, and if we throw back to our first World Finals over there in Tokyo, you were a bit of a victim of a very, very long delay in your 2v2 set. How long did that 2v2 set take from being announced to who the competitors were to actually finishing that best of 3?
So I want to say that the break in between like game 2 and 3 or game 1 and 2 or something was like 40 minutes or something. And I want to say it was like an overall hour 5, hour 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm really proud of that set. I always talk about it. We are the only team to ever lose 0-3 in a best of 3. And it's a very impressive record that I hold dearly.
Yeah, you don't even really know how it happened unless you were there, and that is hilarious. I totally forgot about that. But you guys kept your heads held high. That first year World Finals did not really go in favor of the people from the Western region, but I think from then on, the West did play very, very well, at least in where they landed, and of course, who ended up winning in those World Finals. So we are still holding right now, waiting for that. Oh, here we go. We just got a call from our producer, Tasty Bacon, who's up in the booth. Big shout out to Tasty, who's running all of this and getting us in and out of games as quickly as we possibly can. Adnan, top of your screen. HireCoon at the bottom. Here we go. And a stop and stare here. So obviously we think could be Golem, could be Royal Giant, could be Giant, could be Lava, but we see some gameplay starting now, so that is going to change that conversation.
Could be minor.
Nice call. So maybe Lava Minor at the top of the screen here from Adnan.
And could be RG on the bottom, could be potentially E-Giant, something like that, but usually with the Fish Boy, we do see RG quite a bit more often. And we see the Giant Skeleton follow behind, so I'm still saying RG, but my voice is getting a little bit higher just because I'm not totally positive.
Feels like that could be correct. Trainer Adnan in his first sets, he opened up with a Giant Skeleton, Golden Knight, Magic Archer deck with Drill. He then went to Royal Giant, where he lost his game number 2, and then he stuck with Royal Giant in game number 3. So obviously changing things up here, going to the skies in his first game. Lava double Minor.
That's an interesting flying machine. You're basically sending out 4 Elixir to die because it just has no potential of doing that, and then also forces out the Mega Man in as well. So a pretty big mistake from Adnan. I feel like there should have been any other kind of answer, maybe a Tombstone on top, maybe a defensive Lava, even just a defensive Minor. I really want to go back and look at his cycle right there, because that play right there, just, I feel like it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and not only was it ineffective and he had to overspend, but it really hamstrings him for, 30 seconds to an entire minute. You're not able to get another Lava Hound down because you have to really over-defend. And now you see Adnan kind of having to play throughout his interesting cycle, or weird cycle, as you might say, just because of that flying machine coming out and then the overspend from the Mega Minions. So still reaping a little bit of rewards. Adnan is in the lead, 25-76 to 28-04. However, a very healthy Archer Queen Graveyard push comes in here. So, wow, Graveyard Fisherman. And you know what? I don't even feel bad that we didn't get this call right. This is an interesting deck that is getting a lot of damage right now.
Yeah, he needs to set up for his Lava Push when he can. Archer Queen will get that one last shot, 12-76. The Giant Skeleton Graveyard Archer Queen Zappies deck. It's going to be difficult for the Lava to get through. Yes, we often see players be able to work some magic with these Lava decks. I mean, that's the reason why these Lava decks are so popular. But it's just so difficult. You really don't have the right answers. You don't have the DPS that you need. And these Skeleton Kings are going to get, yeah, I mean, just eaten alive right there. Archer Queen staying with 1% health. And, yeah, not a great position for Adnan.
You know what, I really like the way that HireCoon decided to defend this entire push. Completely ignores the Lava Hound and stacks everything up at the river, dealing with all the units that you really have to pay attention to, right? You're really more worried about the dragons and the flying machine. And of course, maybe... What's that? Yeah. That's a big time connection. Adnan just laughs it off. Skeleton Dragons come down, not in time as the Dark Prince connects. And that is a steal of a game by Higher Kun, who, you know, not in terms of steal of like matchup was horrible, but just in terms of who we thought would probably come out with an easy win or an easier time in this set. But Kun played that absolutely immaculately. I really love the way that he ignored the Lava Hound, doubled down on defense at the bridge, made sure that the most that could happen was only the lava chip damage. It was just great control throughout.
Yeah, he had a lot of great answers, but his deck was so heavy that it made it very difficult to get all those answers out. So I love what you're talking about, going for the support instead of the tank. It's absolutely what you need to do. You can use the giant skeleton to kind of just clump everything together, force the bomb to get a lot of damage on top of the troops, and then have the archer queen, the zappies, clean it up and use spells if you need it. But really just shocking to watch the end of the game right there. He allows the giant skeleton to get onto the tower. He allows the Dark Prince to get onto the tower. Yeah. Really not what we expect from someone like Adnan.
Yeah, you know, and I think a lot of it came back to what happened really early in the game with that flying machine. Now, I know if you guys are watching at home, you might be like, yeah, well, that was like 2 minutes ago. But like we said, when that happened, it set Adnan up in a very downwards trajectory. He had to continue to overspend defensively. Higher Kun recognizes, hey, if he's going to overspend with that flying machine and then still have to play a Mega Minion, I can keep up the aggression without having to be too nervous about it, which is why we saw that early graveyard come out and all the damage that came from it. Then Adnan was finally in a position where his cycle was where it needed to be. And then that's where the defensive Kun came in. Absolutely perfect stuff. And that giant skeleton that he played to kind of soak up the lava pup damage and tank for, I think, a flying machine that was maybe coming in. That was the same giant skeleton that ended up getting on tower, right? So that's just really smart plays. Like you said, the best case scenario is what happened. Giant skeleton gets on tower, bomb goes off, and then you saw the tower go down as much as it did. Or worst case scenario is that giant skeleton dies at the river and cleans up the push behind the flying machine, the skeleton dragons, and some damage on top of the mighty miner, what have you. So really great decision making there, and probably a pretty frustrating game number one here for Adnan.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of just never went his way. He just made a few mistakes and not really the gameplay we expect from him. We really hyped him up. We really expected a lot of perfect, you know, Furkan has kind of has impressed me because of his perfect gameplay. I wouldn't have been like, I wouldn't have changed my mind if I had seen Adnan play perfectly. Like, when I think of his gameplay, that's what I think of. It's like disrespectfully good gameplay when I think of trainer Adnan.
And Josh, I have to interrupt you really quick because that is higher. That is higher from China. That's WEDGM higher. That's higher. That's our former world champion finalist. That's who he's playing against. So it makes. I saw OP Sam tweet about this yesterday, and I actually agree in terms of using Battlefy and in the tournaments like this. When you know players and you know who they are, it's going to change what you're going to play in deck number one. It's going to change what you expect in game number one. I believe he was playing against Asaf using a different name, where there was people online saying, hey, man, everyone knows that's Asaf's other account. Well, OP Sam didn't. And, you know, we have now cast for almost 2 full days and not had the chance to look at Hire's profile because we didn't actually cast any of his matches yesterday. Now finally looking, makes a little bit of sense why he's playing as well as he is.
Yeah. Okay. It makes sense that Hire's playing as well as he is. It makes sense that he defended it the way he did. And it makes sense why Sam is complaining about that. I also kind of agree with that. It's unfortunate that you could have just 2 different names because that really will affect how you set your decks up.
Yeah, and then when we talk about who the underdog really is in this matchup, I think that coin gets flipped, because while Adnan has been an exceptional player in the scene for a while, Hire has been at the highest level in competitive play for year after year after year. I mean, we saw him in 2019, 2018. We saw him at World Finals in 2019 where they got 2nd place. Then in 2020, they were able to get that number 2 spot in the East. split between East and West. This is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and Adnan ran into that. Now, higher at the top of your screen, Adnan at the bottom, so whoever sent that first friendly battle must have been the other player that sent it here. So don't get too confused. The names are where they need to be. The graphics are where they need to be. The players have just swapped size.
Was Higher the player that had that 1 week, like 3 competitions?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Higher's 1 week where he was like far and away the best player in the world because he won like 3 different competitions was unbelievable. Yeah, just unbelievable.
Yeah, he was. He just really showed up when he needed to, and it is really surprising again that this is exactly who we're talking about. It looks like his original account might have been banned, so this is why he's playing the new Higher Coon tag. But that is Higher from WEDGM.
Fire Spirit forced out just because the shield had 0.01% health left. Would have gotten a shot or two on top of the tower. Mortar and Musketeer placed on defense. Mortar should possibly get the lock if nothing else is played, but the lock gets the damage on the Mortar, the Musk, and the tower. And a little baby counter push should be cleaned up nicely with just the knife.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting deck that we're seeing out of Adnan, and we'll see if that conversation that we had before about the Hog EQ version with Giant Skeleton and Archer Queen being the only viable one, because this is an even less popular version than we have ever seen in the past. Usually this deck ran Valkyrie, and you see here instead it's running the Knight because of that Royal Delivery, so this was a version that was also popular out there, but I think it was still kind of second fiddle to the Valkyrie Firecracker version with Tesla.
Absolutely great Skeletons place right there. Didn't need to play it on top, so that way he can't get pre-logged. Places them down low. Fire Spirit cycled at the bridge, the little baby fireball, and you know, solid gameplay from both players. The cannon cart in the middle to activate King, and then the fireball on defense was also really, really solid. Both players doing what they need to do. It's just who can actually put it together when the game matters.
Firecracker will get a little bit of value here on that one splash shot plus the log, 2310 2298. And Higher doing a very good job of controlling the Hog Rider, at least for the time being. Log comes in, perfectly timed log fireball. Firecracker does get more splash once again. And the Firecracker is a lot of times kind of the it factor in this matchup. It creates so much pressure, even when the Hog Rider doesn't connect. Defense has to come down on the Hog. So the Firecracker synergy, you can see why it was so popular for as long as it was. But once again, we're seeing, you know, 2 decks come out without champions. Will that end up working out in either of their favors?
Guards placed high. Mortar is going to be taken out by the Earthquake, and Musketeer is going to snipe that, so we will see the log plus delivery on top. There it is. And then the Miner will be able to get a little bit of chip damage, getting the tower down to 2008. But as this game heads into Triple Elixir, as this game gets lower and lower, these Hog decks are just so strong. So strong that it's got me saying show strong. Yeah, man. Triple Elixir, Earthquake Cycle is just difficult to stop.
Yeah, and you see, again, Firecracker going to get that splash damage on tower. Cannon Cart's going to come off of the wheels here. Does get that snipe shot on top. Nice catch here by Adnan on that Miner, but Miner's still on top of the tower. So not a nice catch, but a nice attempt at a catch. 15-11, but Higher still down a bit. Firecracker placed in a great spot. Will get some more splash damage here. Mortar comes out late, and it's just so difficult to keep up with this Earthquake Hog deck, especially with Knight in instead of Valkyrie. It's just such good cycle, and then on top of that, you have really, really great defensive capabilities with that Royal Delivery right at the bridge. And this Firecracker now has splashed on that tower 2 or 3 times. 2 Firecrackers on the board. Earthquake comes in, and it feels like we're going to game 3 AC.
Beautiful gameplay. These Firecrackers are stupendous. Miner is doing what it can, gets the tower all the way to 724. With the help of a fireball, it'll get down to about 550. Just will not be enough. Cannon placed on defense. Log placed on defense. Earthquake going to be placed on defense soon, and that should be... No, not just yet.
Wow, and that Fire Spirit does get stopped. Log coming in. You can see Higher just cycling his life away. Log comes down, and that's a really, really great game number 2. Adnan getting by the skin of his teeth. 169 HP remaining on that tower, and Higher does what I think a really, really great job through playing a pretty tough matchup there. You saw how much value those firecrackers got. The fireballs were really, really tough to place for Hire because part of it was, okay, do I fireball the firecracker and the pile up at the bridge, or do I need to save that fireball because my cycle is slower? I have to be worried about the earthquake on my mortar. Do I need that fireball for pushback on those hog rider defenses? So we saw Hire choose between, 2 or 3 options that he had to defend, but he was never really able to defend adequately because almost every situation resulted in earthquake cycle damage, or more importantly, the firecracker splash damage.
Yeah, and I feel like he defended it exceptionally well. And I think it really goes down to the deck overall. After watching that deck that Adnan used, I don't think it's a good deck. He got firecracker chip damage throughout. The earthquake cycle was, there, so it's not like he wasn't cycling enough. The defense just wasn't good enough. The Knight never, maybe it has something to do with the fact that he could never really catch it. I mean, even when we both thought that he caught the miner still got shot somehow. But it was shocking how close the game was with the amount of chip damage the firecracker got, the amount of times that he almost defended the miners, but was, still had elixir, so he was able to clean it up with skeletons or Knight. I don't like the deck overall, and he only got away with it because of how strong he is as a player and, just the matchup overall.
Yeah, that is actually a really interesting point that you make about that deck, and really how close it was, because if it was either of the other more popular versions, maybe the Giant Skeleton Archer Queen one would have struggled just a bit more because the cycle would have been more on pace with the deck that Hire was running, and you wouldn't have gotten so many positive elixir trades at the bridge with chip damage with that Royal Delivery plus the log. But the point that you make is really sound. I mean, he barely got away with that with 169 HP remaining. 1 or 2 less shots from those firecrackers splashing on through, and that could have been a very, very different final 10, 15, 20 seconds that could have went in Hire's favor. So yeah, really, really great gameplay from both, and it felt like Hire played his way through a tougher matchup while Adnan kind of got away with one just because of some luck with the firecrackers and luck with the draw.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of good that we're doing the dual format just in general for Adnan, so that way we don't have to watch him use this deck again.
So to your point, let's look at what can and cannot be used by these two players. So Hire ran a very interesting Giant Skeleton, Dark Prince, Archer Queen, Fisherman, Graveyard deck in game number 1, also using snowballs, zappies, and arrows. Those are all no longer available for Hire. And then on the other side of it with Adnan, the deck that we just saw, Hog, EQ, Log, Firecracker, Cannon, Delivery, and Knight, all not being able to be played again. So in terms of what's available, both of them have, Hire has a champion unavailable in the Archer Queen. They both still have the Golden Knight. They both still have the Skeleton King. Adnan has the ability to use every one of the champions in the game because he used Mighty Miner in game 1 where he lost. I'd be very curious to see where they're going to go here. I mean, if you look and you see that's only Earthquake and Log that's out for Adnan, so I can't imagine Hire wants to go anything too baity. There's a lot of bait answers still available. The bar barrel's still available. The arrows are still available. Graveyard being used in game 1 by Hire makes it so the poison doesn't feel like it has to be played, but you definitely need to have something that can help clean up skeletons in case Skeleton King comes in. I feel like, at least for the conversation for this specific game number 3, Adnan has so much more available in the popular meta.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. The Graveyard deck, while it is funky, it was using a lot of powerful cards.
Yeah.
And then with Adnan, you've already used Hog, so, you just can't use Hog again. And then at the same time, it's like Log, Earthquake, Skellies. Like, you can get away, you can swap those cards and everything. So definitely a lot more available to him. Hire on the top side, going to be using Bandit. We could be seeing like a drill matchup from both players. I don't know where he's headed with this deck so far.
Bomber coming out makes you think he could be going to Electro Giant since Dark Prince is not available. Maybe that was the idea, to swap in Bandit for a little bit of instant pressure with the dash. but obviously not as tanky. So we shall see. Adnan going to what looks like drill.
Bandit will get the dash on top of the Magic Archer, and the log will unfortunately place the Ghost back, so that way it doesn't hop on to the right. Like the Ghost, that interaction was just unfortunate for him is what I'm trying to say, because the Bandit, I feel like, should have done more damage.
Yeah, the Bandit definitely could have gotten more value had it been outside of Princess Tower range. But small interaction early on, 27-47 to 25-26, and a lot of Elixir coming down the lane. That Golden Knight putting the Cannon Cart on skates, Inferno Tower getting a lot of value. High Fire Spirit not as effective as Higher would have liked, and the Skellies. So Skellies plus Fire Spirit not able to take out the Bomber. Bomber gets a couple shots, Golden Knight gets a couple shots, and just like that, Adnan in control of this set now.
Yeah, huge mistake right there. Needed to delay on the Fire Spirit. That was, you know, it was an obvious interaction. You have the Bomber, you have the Cannon Cart. Those two are going to pair together and take out the Fire Spirit in time. So just a huge mistake right there. Not one we really expect to see all that often. And he's in a bad spot now. His opponent does not.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That is just dirty. Go ahead.
Yeah, his opponent doesn't have a big spell. So as long as he can keep his tower somewhat healthy, he'll be fine. But right here,
Magic Archer does not connect as Higher decides to change lanes, and this Magic Archer will not get a shot because of the log plus the Skellies. There it does. It still gets another shot, so it has been the micro that has really been hurting Higher here. You know, and we've said for years now, mistakes beget mistakes, and it feels like it's mistake after mistake here for Higher. Even right there, Fire Spirit played a second early. You know, that Fire Spirit Cannon Cart connection earlier on was a pretty obvious play, like you said. Then he doubles down on the mistake, plays the Skeletons too early before the Bomber's locked on the tower. Bomber gets shots, Golden Knight gets shots, 170 HP remains. Like you said, no big spell, but a lot of trouble here for Higher.
Yeah, these Cannon Carts, he's playing too sound on defense. Cannon Cart low. You know, the NATO interactions have always been pretty good. He's going to do the drill, the NATO, and then potentially something crazy. But right here, we see 87 HP. Can anything get a shot? We don't see it just yet. He's going to have to reset for one more go.
Oh, the Royal Ghost gets a shot. And there you go. Adnan ends up turning that set around with a really great games 2 and 3. Game 3, though, is where things really kind of fell off the rails for Higher. Man, it really did feel like it was that initial Golden Knight Bomber interaction that changed the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It just went downhill from there, and he really never played perfectly.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting. You know, you touched on it. The Fire Spirit was early. Throughout the game, it was mistake after mistake right there. That's not something we expect from Higher. Now that we know it's Higher, that's not something we expect from him. We expect perfection because that's what he's shown us so far throughout his career. But right there, early Fire Spirits, missed interactions, the Fire Spirit into a Bomber and Cannon Cart when you know that the Cannon Cart or the Bomber has to, you know, target something. Otherwise, it's just going to be taken out. It was kind of shocking to see in a game number 3.
Yeah, and then even late game, you know, we saw Fire Spirit plus Skeletons played too early again on top of drills, so the Goblins were able to get a couple hits to bring that tower really, really low. I think it brought it down to like 210 or something like that. So just some surprising, massive misplays from Higher. And the crazy thing too is those misplays were all played with really, really cheap cards. So you think that they're maybe the most forgiving in terms of how much Elixir I just spent and how little value I got out of them. But Adnan knows at this level, even just wasting 2 Elixir and allowing tower damage to come in, you're at least even, which means you can just kind of reset. And that Cannon Cart plus Golden Knight combination was just used to absolute perfection. The amount of times that Cannon Cart kind of got that rocket boost from the Golden Knight behind, and then sometimes the Golden Knight still being able to get on top of tower. The Inferno Tower being a great card to pull, but really tough in terms of dealing with the Cannon Cart because of the reset halfway through. So all things going Adnan's way after a very dominant game number 1 from Higher. So we are moving along in our bracket throughout our semifinals. We have 2 players that have already made it through in Furkan and in Adnan, 2 exceptional players. And here is a quick look in at our bracket. There you go. things are already on their way. And Inthril, of course, my apologies to you, Inthril. Yes, you have made it through as well. You have not lost a game yet, which has been a very, very dominant performance. Furkan dropped the game to CMG Mini, but then was able to take out Ascendant 2-0. Hugo still alive, still playing 2-1 in his first set against the Cal Alexi. Pandora, well, Josh, you wanted to see Pandora play, and we're going to see it. Our final matchup of the quarterfinals coming your way. Yeoment. Looks like we're both a little excited today, Josh.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I'll give us a pass. This is day number 2. See, if we had done that on day number 1, then it looks bad. But day number 2, we're exempt from any kind of those kind of mistakes.
Is that how it works?
I think so.
It's good to know for me. And yeah, we are on day number 2. There's going to be Clash Royale action from Royale Masters coming your way every single week for the next 4 weeks. We have 3 weeks open qualifiers. This is obviously open qualifier number 1 coming to its end. But then we have Open Qualifier 2, 3, the last chance qualifier, and then the playoffs where $25,000 will be up for grabs, along with that golden ticket to join the Elite Four, who are already secured in our World Finals. Mohamed Light, and Samuel Basoto are the 4 players that are going to be going through to our World Finals. Obviously, Momo had to give one of those golden tickets to Mugi. His, we can call him a rival for fun, even though you know that they really respect each other. But Mugi was the person who took that first place spot from Mo last season. And then Gens Aslan out of Turkey got that 4th golden ticket. The 5th golden ticket still up for grabs as the tournaments are underway. There's 3 big Clash Royale tournaments going on right now. And then, of course, the 6th ticket is going to be given away here at Royale Masters Gold Edition. And if you're watching right now, you still have a chance to get that ticket, whether it's through Open Qualifier points 2 and 3 or that last chance qualifier. As we hop into game number 1 here, Pandora, top of your screen. You at the bottom, and I was going to say, Josh, you love Pandora, and I think Pandora must love you back. He's running 3M.
3 Musketeers in competition. 2 minutes and 3 seconds. I want to see these cycled at least 4 or 5 more times. Yeah, you know, the Earthquake is going to be difficult. He's not going to be able to stack pumps. But the great thing about 3M players is they're very creative, innovative, all those
good-looking, smart, has a 305 bench max.
Not anymore. I hurt my shoulder.
Well, if I get to kind of geek out over Mortar, it does feel like you do deserve a little bit of 3M love. We've seen it twice in this competition, once yesterday, once today, and did not work out yesterday. We'll see if Pandora has a little bit better luck. As I do get to talk about Mortar all the time, you get a little bit of 3M love.
And there we go, sets up the 2nd pump. Golden Knight will come, and so will the RG. RG falls behind, and E-barbs are placed on top. One of the E-barbs will get immediately pulled, but the E-bar plus Ghost will be able to clean this up fairly quickly. 1911, lowest tower right there. Can it get the dash in time? It does not. Fire Spirit, or I'm just not used to seeing that card. Heal Spirit gonna follow up the push, try and allow the Ghost to get a couple more shots. Not the case, but that's all right. Sets up a 2nd pump.
Pandora had a really interesting year last year. You know, did get #1 on ladder back in June of 2021. We saw him play very well in the Queso Cup Summer Split Finals, getting in 2nd place. But it was really about him showing up over and over in Clash Royale League in the monthly rounds. We saw him in round 2 getting 8th place, but he was a part of almost every single one. But a lot of his other finishes were number 24, number 24, number 44, number 36. So we didn't get to talk about him a lot at our monthly finals, but definitely someone who was always in the mix. And obviously, as we just said, did show up at World Finals in that 32nd spot.
3 Musketeers placed once again at the bridge. Can he do anything with it is the question, though. E-barbs are not going to be placed in time. They do get placed in time. Excuse me. Log placed on the right, so that's going to be a 1 health Musketeer right there. And this E-bar plus Golden Knight connection, Golden Knight should be able to dash and potentially save himself from the bomb. Are we going to see it? We do not. So that's going to be double Ghost on top of the RG. Double Ghost not going to be enough. Plus the Log going to get 1 last shot. 509 HP on the tower. He needs to do something and something quick.
And that was just a really great defense there by Hugo with that Giant Skeleton. Giant Skeleton was placed up high on top of that 1 HP Musketeer. snipes the Musketeer out of the way, then has to deal with the Giant Skeleton plus the E-Barbs. Great kiting here of all those units. E-Barb almost gets a lucky swing on tower with that Giant Skeleton Bomb pushing it over, but not the case for Pandora, who definitely needs a little bit of luck right now. Earthquake Cycle comes in, bringing that tower down to 347. 3 Musketeers come out, no time for a pump. Got to focus on offense. Giant Skeleton up high. Really, really nice use there, but no tank now on the left-hand side as Zappies come down and try to deal with this Musketeer. E-Barb's push.
It's not the most difficult defense ever. It's not the most impressive defense ever, but I will say this, like, he is playing this absolutely perfectly on Hugo's end. I mean, the Fisherman in the middle, the Zappies in the middle, it's really as simple as that. Can you be calm, collected with how you're going to play this game? So far he has, and it's worked out brilliantly for him. That's going to be a Giant Skeleton on the left, so we are going to have to kind of watch out for that, but at this point, it's a sellout push. Can he get the damage? Not going to happen. Brilliantly played from Hugo.
Yeah.
It never got overwhelmed.
Yeah, and you know, Pandora really made a great case for himself towards the end of that game, which is exactly what this deck needs to do. You need to overwhelm. You need your opponent to overspend. But Hugo was always ready to go. He always had the Giant Skeleton placed where it needed to be. That Giant Skeleton Bomb was a great 9th card played by Hugo over and over again. You saw it being used there near the end, played up high at the river to deal with that Golden Knight plus 2 Musketeers split to the right-hand side, which allowed him to be able to defend on the left-hand side with Zappies plus the Fisherman. Then the Giant Skeleton comes down again at the very end to protect the Zappies. Just a really, really great job of recognizing what's my biggest threat. Golden Knight dashes connecting on my tower, and then overspending in one lane, and then getting punished in the opposite by the E-Barbs. And, you know, and Pandora still even had some really great Heal Spirit connections. He had an excellent zap on top of the Fisherman when the Royal Ghost was on top of tower, so the Fish Boy had to reset its pull. Royal Ghost got a little bit more damage in. But like you said, man, Hugo had to play calm, cool, and collected. That's the most important thing when playing against the deck that we just saw out of Pandora, and Hugo did exactly that.
Yeah, I just, you know, how was my energy at the end of the game? Was I sounding sad? Or I was trying to fight through it, but it was tough to watch. I mean, he really did everything that he could. I think there was potential for maybe trying to stack more pumps. We saw early on that the double pump kind of put him in a weird position. And yes, he did give up. I think the right tower got to like 1900 HP because of it. But you need to be making those plays. Otherwise, just the Zappies in the middle provide so much value every single time. Giant Skeleton will always be able to clean up the side with 2 Musketeers. So you're always left just going one lane. The whatever lane the 2 Musketeers in, it's gone, it's done. And then the other side, it's always getting halted by the Zappies in the middle, by the Fisherman in the middle. So, I mean, just tremendous gameplay from Hugo. That's what we expect from him. Just a little disappointing it had to be against that deck.
And that player. We all know how you geek out on the Japanese players, Josh. Let's just be honest here. Mugi's, you're a Mugi stan. You love Pandora, and why not? I mean, Japan has created and produced some of the absolute best and most exciting Clash Royale players that have ever touched their phones or their tablets. And yeah, back to this matchup, you know, you and I have talked a lot about the Zappies specifically in 2022. They're a card that is kind of ignored in terms of balance, in terms of how strong they are, in terms of decks that have them and those decks win percentage. There's always a different card to focus on. It's always, well, no, it's not the Zappies, it's the Golden Knight, or it's not the Zappies, it's the Royal Giant. It's not the Zappies, blah, 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 blah. But as you guys have seen so much in 2022, those Zappies being used correctly are still one of the strongest cards in the game, and I think one of the most perfectly balanced cards in the game. They are so ineffective, but also incredibly, exponentially effective when used correctly. If you cycle them incorrectly, you know, you lose that stun. They don't create much of a threat coming across the bridge when you play them naked. But in terms of the way that Hugo used them and, you know, really abusing the eyesight and eyeline of those E-Barbs and the slow stun, and also the control of never placing them in a position where they are going to let you chain that Golden Knight dash. These are all really, really great things that we didn't even talk about during the game because there's so many other excellent points to focus on.
Yeah. Everything was just done so well. It was really great to watch. And I loved. I think he pressured twice. I think it was like 2 RJs total. And that's ridiculous to see. Like, that is not something we see from RG, which is, you know, one of the many reasons why I love Clash Royale. Every single deck has a correct way to play it. I mean, at least a fairly correct way to play it. And so to see a deck that constantly needs to be cycled 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a game, but to only see it twice, and that's the correct way to play, it's pretty interesting.
And I guarantee it was that patience of Hugo that created the frustration and the urgency from Pandora, because, you know, those E-Barbs were never in cycle for the Royal Giants. It was just, here's pressure, here's pressure, here's pressure. I think I have an opening, so let's use the E-Barbs here. Hugo defends perfectly, then gets the Royal Giant out opposite lane. We saw the Royal Ghost, mirrored Royal Ghost defense, which was really ineffective on that first big Royal Giant hit. And the patience and the poise of Hugo came through in many different facets in that first game. But this is where the pressure kind of gets turned up for Hugo, right? He's getting deeper into quarters as he gets closer to semis and maybe even the grand finals. That's when we see his gameplay kind of fall apart a little bit. And that's something that I've said for now a year and a half, that I need to see Hugo kind of conquer those nerves, as he is one of my absolute favorite players. And if you guys check over on YouTube, there is a poll going right now for who is going to win. Is it going to be Pandora or is it going to be Hugo? Hugo, 45%. Pandora, 55%. Here we go. Game number 2 underway.
1 minute, 15 seconds left. Fire Spirit cycle from Pandora. Nothing from Hugo. And so Pandora has everything available to him. He doesn't have to worry. He could potentially use 3 Musketeers again. I'd be pretty shocked if that was the case. Hugo, on the other hand, can't use RG. So it's going to be interesting to see what he goes with. We should be seeing either Drill or E-Giant up top. Hugo, on the other hand, could be using E-Giant himself. It's going to be... It's really up to interpretation so far.
Yeah, it does feel like it could be an E-Giant matchup here. Baby Dragon comes down. Nice lightning there on top of the hut and on top of that Goblin Brawler. That Goblin Brawler was going to be one of the keys for Hugo to get some great single target DPS in, but instead has to resort to getting that mega minion out, and it's going to be Golem instead, which is what it's starting to look like more and more as the Baby Dragon and the mega minion came out. So we see Golem going down the right-hand lane after a clean defense from Hugo. Pandora stacks up on the opposite side of the board.
Bar Barrel is not able to take out the Bomber, so he does have to be worried about that. Dark Prince will get to the tower. Golden Knight is going to come down, but that is going to be an E-Giant on the tower and an Inferno Dragon on the side, like taking out the Golem. This is not the interaction that Hugo wanted. This is exactly the interactions that Pandora wanted right here. Inferno Dragon takes out the Golem nicely, and even potentially could get a counter push with this. No, instead is to just let that go and then try and reset, try and get a push on the left side.
Yeah, that was just all bad for Hugo, from the Golem coming down to the missing of the Dark Prince and the Dark Prince getting on top of tower, having to use the NATO on top of the Golem, or excuse me, the E-Giant, as opposed to doing some sort of NATO work on top of the Inferno Dragon. The Inferno Dragon being in the mix, dealing with that Golem. All things looking rough here for Hugo. But now the conversation becomes, well, does Hugo start to change lanes with that Golem? Does he turn these defenses into strong counter pushes? And we'll just have to wait and see.
Hugo defends the Brawler with a Bar Barrel, and the Bomber on Pandora's side is going to be able to get a bit of value. Baby Dragon getting cycled in the back, Mega Minion getting cycled in the back. Hugo decides on a Golem bridge because the Inferno Dragon is cycled on the left side, recognizing that this could be his only chance of winning.
I like that play. I really do, and I want to see how much more elixir he's going to spend here. NATO's everything together, hoping to get that Bomber off the board with the Golden Knight dash, and it does work out. Goblin Brawler going to be distracting that Inferno Dragon. However, Electro Giant working down that right-hand lane. Baby Dragon played offset to the left, then works towards the right. No elixir in hand for a Golem, and some defense that has to be played. So a Lightning gets played at the bridge, and now another Cage should be able to come out and pull coast to coast. There you go. Nice Lightning.
Yeah, that is a brilliant Lightning right there. Golden Knight gets the dash. Can he do anything with it? It's looking like that's not going to be the case. NATO will be used to get the E-Giant off. The tower Cage is placed as well. But if the Golden Knight doesn't get a dash, 2021, 600 HP separating the two players, 1098. There's nothing he could do at this point. A clean victory for Pandora in game number 2.
Yeah, I mean, the lightning work from Pandora was just exceptional through that entire game. The opportunities were a always there, it felt like, you know, and a big part of that was always looking for that value on top of that Goblin Cage, Brawler, and Princess Tower. I mean, that alone, you get the Cage out of play, you get the Brawler's DPS off the board, and that's already a great trade every single time. Then that Electro Giant becomes so much more dangerous to deal with, not having that Brawler there. And we saw how many times Hugo had to use those late NATOs to pull the E-Giant away and then have to double down on defense with the cheapest card that he could have, but also he needed to play his most effective cards. So sometimes he'd have to overspend depending on the E-Giant's health with the Mega Minion, NATO, plus the Brawler, or as we saw late game, which also was pretty ineffective, was the NATO plus the Barb Barrel. So just a really, really tough spot and not a really lot of great opportunities for that Golem to come down.
Yeah, and you have to look at the Golem being used in game number 2, and you have to think that it's kind of a questionable play. We see Golem getting used in these game number 2s, game number 3s all the time, and I just don't think it has. There's no reason to use Golem. It doesn't make sense. There's no success to be shown. It just struggles often.
Yeah, we talked a little bit yesterday about how at least that one specific Golem deck or variations of that Golem deck, sometimes the building is swapped out, is probably the most viable Golem deck. But then when we also talk about Golem at the highest level, it doesn't really give you that opportunity for outplayability. And that's exactly what we saw with Hugo there. He did just get outplayed both sides of the board. Pandora was happy to defend when he needed to, found places for the Electro Giant to come down. The Lightning was always a threat. It was always getting a lot of value. And of course, the cycle on that deck is another thing that we haven't talked about a lot. That Electro Giant deck you saw in that final push, a Lightning came down at the very beginning to deal with the Brawler, the Cage, and the Princess Tower, and then again at the very end of that push on top of the Brawler, the Cage, and I think it went to the Mega Minion because the tower was lower HP than both of those units. So the E-Giant didn't get the help with the Princess Tower damage, but didn't need it because it had a clear path right on through. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting when we talk about Golem in general and kind of how it stacks up in competitive play. We were kind of singing its praises yesterday, but it didn't feel like a good call here in Game 2.
Yeah, I feel like there's always going to be a better answer, a better deck to be using. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing, what was it? It was that graveyard deck that we saw in the previous set where, you know, that could be potentially used. I really liked the synergy with all those cards together. There's a lot of options, a lot of opportunities to potentially use that in game number 3 if there's, you know, 2 or 3 cards that are going to be out of cycle, but your opponent has everything available to him. I just don't see Golem. I mean, it's basically like a ladder match at this point, and Golem just isn't really the answer you should be looking for.
So, since we did find ourselves in that position, and as much as we're saying, you know, I mean, this is a lot of hindsight as 2020 in terms of being in the caster booth and being able to just go, this didn't work out. This is not the deck you should have played. If you did find yourself in this matchup like Hugo just did, is the better call to wait until mid-double, beginning a triple to play that Golem? Or is that too much time spent defending and too much lightning value that comes in?
I think there's potential for trying to go Golem same lane. Then you can potentially, you know, because you have to be worried about stacking too many troops on top.
Yeah. Because
you want to be protecting your Cage and your Brawler from getting lightninged off. But at the same time, if everything's placed together, then you just get NATO together and everything dies to the E-Giant. So there's the balance. It's really just a bad matchup overall because you don't have the DPS necessary. You're always going to get lightning for your Cage and your Brawler. So you can't stack troops on top, but you can't spread them out either. And you're left with trying to go Golem in the bridge when Inferno Dragon is placed on the opposite lane, but your opponent still has Cage. So you still don't make it through.
So let's take a look here at what's available for these guys after looking at the first 2 games played as we're waiting for game number 3 to start. Remember, we hop into games as soon as we possibly can, guys. I see you guys hanging out in the chat. We appreciate you being here. as we're waiting for this third game to start, we're going to look at the decks that are no longer available for Hugo and Pandora. So Pandora ran Three Musketeers, Mirror Pump in game number 1. All those cards still available. Though the only ones that I think you really pay attention to that are still available in that deck are the Golden Knight and the Royal Ghost. Those still have a lot of decks that they find themselves in. Very popular, very strong decks that he can still play. However, in game number 2, the win that Pandora got, he used NATO and Fire Spirit, 2 really popular cards in the meta. The rest of the cards can be swapped out pretty easily. You know, obviously Bomber and E-Giant, you're not going to see decks that really use Bomber a lot other than drill decks. So, you know, probably not going to drill out of Pandora. Then when you talk about what's available for Hugo, he used Log and Earthquake in game number 1, Royal Giant, Giant Skeleton, Fisherman, all that. So Log and Earthquake being out, that just means we probably won't see any sort of Hog. So there's a couple decks that we won't see, but there's still so much out there that's available. Hugo is a big-time Mortar player. He loves the control of it. It's, I think, his probably favorite win condition. And then Pandora on the other side, maybe we see Royal Giant.
Royal Giant, the call out for Pandora. Wouldn't mind seeing that myself. Hugo, I would love to see him use Mortar right here. This is, you know, it would make you happy. It would make me happy. And I think it would make him happy as well. And so that's going to be a nice little trinity. And yeah, hopefully that works out for him.
So stop, stare, look, and listen. Pandora top your screen, Hugo at the bottom, the Frenchman at the bottom, Japanese player at the top. And we've seen a little bit of Lava Hound. Could be that. No E-Giant obviously available for Pandora. No Golem probably wanting to be played by Hugo, but he could run back the same deck. However, you know, Inferno Dragon out of play, Lightning out of play. Maybe Golem is a good card to go to, but Inferno Tower has been also worked in the mix quite a bit. Here we go.
You know,
oh, go ahead.
I feel like in day 1 there were no matches that waited till Double Elixir started, and I feel like this is our 3rd or 4th game that we've already seen where both players are waiting to hit double.
Yeah, and it you know, before, back in the day when you were talking about the one-trick days of 2018 and some of 2019 Clash Royale, it was always a stop and stare, and then we'd only see Lava, we'd only see Golem, and it looks like it could still be Lava from both these guys, although Hugo still could be just running back that Golem deck. Never mind, Cannon Cart comes out, so it could be a variation on Golem. A lot of opportunities available, and it is.
Using Golem game 2 and game 3, that's a choice to make.
I was just gonna say, it's a choice.
I think that's the best way to explain it, but here we go. Cannon Cart, I love Cannon Cart variations a lot more. I think they have a lot more success against like a wide variety, so I do enjoy that he chose to use that variation. Mega Minion on defense against the Lava, that's going to clean up nicely. No Baby Dragon cycle for the Skeleton Dragons plus Flying Machines at the beginning of this push, so that's why he struggled to defend that first push so much. Golem placed in front.
Yeah.
Can he get the damage that he needs? It's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. I'd love a Baby Dragon NATO play. You could have got the Baby Dragon and the Golden Knight NATO, you know, interaction going. Instead, doesn't use it, but Baby Dragon takes every troop out pretty cleanly.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of this matchup that we've seen so far is exactly the card that you mentioned at the top, Josh, in that Cannon card. It's been doing a really good job of setting the line at the bridge, dealing with that Skeleton King, not allowing a lot of value from its ability, and of course then allowing the Mega Minion from Hugo to get a ton of value on top of that Lava Hound every single time. So, you know, Hugo sees that what he's doing is working. Flying Machine almost gets on top of tower. That would have been dangerous, but Golem comes out in time again for Hugo, and then now Baby Dragon is in cycle. Mega Minion comes down as well, and this should be a nice cleanup with a good counter push coming in. Hugo might even be able to get a second Golem down in time.
You know, this is really interesting because, oh, cannot get the push that he needed to get. Lightning will come down on top of the Mega Minion plus the Skeleton King. But that Cannon Cart was taken out by the splash of the Skeleton Dragons, and that is not something that we often see. The splash is so minuscule, but right there does what it needs to do. Mega Minion on top of the Mega Minion, but the Flying Machine might help the opposing Mega Minion work out.
And somehow Hugo is able to stop the bleeding, 925 to 1913. And back in the day, we used to say, Golems going into Lava Hound's same lane, the Golem should be able to find some success, but with the addition of these cards and the specific matchup that we're in, without a great big spell to hit all of those units piling up like it called it, in 3, it's going to have to do a lot more creative defenses here on Hugo's side of the board.
That miner is putting in work. One of the lava pups has locked onto the tower. Wow, Pandora gets a clean victory, and it's the difference between having a Night Witch and not having a Night Witch. Golem struggles when you're going same lane and you don't have a Night Witch in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be it, right? I was just kind of touching on the fact that Golem in Lava Hound in same lane, Golem would come out on top a lot of the time. But that was also back in the day when Golem was only played with Night Witch. So Pandora comes out on top. He beats Hugo, who had an exceptional run. He was 7-1 in his qualifiers yesterday. He was the #1 player out of Group D. He had a 78.9% win rate and a 68% win rate from his opponents. But he has been eliminated. We'll check in with our bracket here in just 1 second. And that is a very, very, I don't want to say, thing that you're going to expect from Hugo, but this is kind of that moment that he runs into the wall a lot in competitive play. It's right in that quarterfinals, semifinals moment where Hugo starts to struggle just a little bit. And I don't know how I feel about the double golems in game number 2 and game number 3. It just really hamstrings him in terms of what that matchup is and his ability to outplay and create opposite lane pressure. So Pandora, 2-1 over Hugo, is going to move on to our semifinals. The 4 that remain from the 1100 yesterday are Trainer Adnan, or It Hurts, Inthrill, Furkan, and Pandora. So we got players from all over the world here looking to still claim that prize of the prize purse and, of course, the points. The points are so important in these qualifying rounds. Yes, the money's good. Yes, the accolades are good. The clout's always fun, but you really want to make sure you have enough points to qualify before that last chance qualifier comes in, because yes, you can still qualify by getting in the top 4 there. You have no idea how the other players are going to play, and also who's going to show up. There's a lot of other events going on right now that is taking up the time and the phones of those other players. Those players can show up in week 4 or later on in our qualifiers and still make it through to our finals. So that's what's going to happen down the line. But what's happening right now is the semifinals coming your way. We're going to take a quick break, allow our players to reset their decks, think about who they're going to play. A few more matches coming your way, 2 in semifinals, and of course our grand finals, best of 5. Don't move a muscle, Royale Masters Gold Edition. We'll be back in 5. All right, we are back here for our Royale Masters Gold Edition semifinals, and we're going to start with a great matchup between It Hurts and Trainer Adnan slash It Hurts going up against InThrill, one player who we kind of hyped up quite a bit in his quarterfinals matchup in Trainer Adnan, who then ended up struggling just a little bit against Higher. He dropped game number 1, was able to come back in games 2 and 3. InThrill on the other side of it has been playing really clean Clash Royale top to bottom from yesterday all the way on through today. The Polish player who has been making a name for himself over the last 2 seasons of competitive Clash Royale. AC, any thoughts going into this matchup? Any favorites? Who do you think is going to come out on top?
I think I always have to favorite the player that's, been in the scene the longest. Game 1, it was pretty shocking what he did against Higher. Because it was only a few mistakes, but again, we really don't expect mistakes from these pros of this caliber. But games 2 and games 3, he played phenomenally. I always have to, he's had success for the longest time. I was in his clan, we've got that kind of emotional connection together. I gotta say, he's the favorite in this one. InThrill, on the other hand, 2-0, 2-0. If you're gonna start off a day number 2 going 2-0, 2-0, you gotta feel happy about that. I'd say it's a 51-49.
Okay, all right, 51-49 from AC, going just a bit towards Trader Adnan, but as he said, InThrill has been perfect so far on the day. It was 2-0 over Sub from the Cal clan, and then 2-0 over Betfus, one of the best Expo players in the game, and also one of the best competitive players out there. It Hurts a little bit more ups and downs. He has lost a game in both of his opening sets, once against the Lost, who had our highest win rate coming into today, and once against Higher in set number 2. So Adnan going back to Hog EQ and InThrill going to Mortar Drill. This is something that has started to show up just a little bit more recently. The synergy of the drill going to the tower, the defense that has to come out on the drill, and the mortar being used as the strongest defensive building and offensive building combination in the game. Still able to get offensive pressure with the drill on tower, but also able to defend when necessary when you're in need of that building, because one of the worst things about drill is when you have to use it on defense.
Hog coming down. Will he have the right answer for it? No Earthquake coming out, but that should be one shot, and there we go. We do see one shot from the Hog, not the Do-Si-Do. Dark Prince in response on top of the drill. And then just a nice defense. He's just done a lot of damage. Hasn't really had to worry about any offensive opportunities from InThrill. So we need to see InThrill step up the offensive pressure, but it's hard because you have Drill and your opponent has Dark Prince as a response, and you have Mortar and your opponent has Earthquake as a response. So this is just not what he's looking for so far. He's going to need to either build a push or just something has to change.
Nice fireball there, plus the Musketeer Log going to come in, though. So InThrill down, and a couple of licks are going to send in that Goblin Drill to kind of punctuate this push from the Musketeer. Hog Rider going to come out. Skeletons would have been able to tank for that Muskie, but the Hog doing a better job there, making sure the Musketeer was not going to be a threat. We do see damage on all sides of the board here. We saw a Dark Prince connection there in the bottom right, where a Valkyrie connection in the top left gets us to InThrill's lowest tower of 1693 and Adnan's lowest tower of 2652. Fire Spirit down that right-hand lane.
I don't know if you saw the skeletons that were played, but they were cycled in a way where 2 of them went to the drill, 1 of them went to the side, so that way the Fire Spirit would get caught by the singular skeleton on the side. So just brilliance from Adnan throughout. Again, great play. I mean, just the way he's spreading out his troops, making sure that the Fire Spirit doesn't get enough value. It's brilliant what he's done so far. And, I mean, just everything he's doing is correct. He's getting the value he needs. He's cycling Earthquake, cycling Logs exactly how he should. And Archer Queen, even there, just gets that shot.
Yeah, and you see really the story is, yes, they're even in Elixir, but the tower damage and the ease of the getting to tower from Adnan is much more relevant and prevalent than InThrill's. And that was a really nice Fire Spirit to kind of push that Hog right into the mortar. Good skeleton work on both sides. That's not exactly what InThrill wanted out of his skeletons, but does cover just enough for that Muskie to stay healthy. And now we see the combination of the drill plus the mortar. The Dark Prince just out high. Mortar, though, locked on that Royal Delivery. Royal Delivery slash allows 2 mortar shots to come in. Now the mortar would have reset had it stayed alive. 1357 now. That gap getting quite small here from Adnan's big-time lead. Nice lane change.
Yeah, I mean, it has everything to do with, can you place the delivery on top of the support troops and not the drill? And right there, he was forced to play it on top of the drill. The Dark Prince didn't come out in time. The mortar was locked onto the delivery, and so it got two shots on the tower. That is not something that we really see that often, and it's hard to get in a bad cycle with a cycle deck. But right there, he was in a terrible cycle, and now Inthrill gave himself a chance.
Yeah, and one of the other things Inthrill has been doing really nicely, not sure if Fireball was necessary there, but he really cannot take any more hog shots. Now down in Elixir, no building in hand. Log comes out on top of that Valkyrie to help that hog. 287 remains. And some really, really great stuff from Adnan. Doing a lot with very little is Inthrill, but this game should be an easy W for trainer Adnan. And talking about what Inthrill had to do in this game, like you had mentioned before, Josh, we were in a hog matchup with mortar as your win condition, as your building of choice to defend. You're going to have to play that mortar offset to the right-hand side and then push the Hog Rider into it so that there's not earthquake value coming down on top of the Princess Tower and on top of the mortar every single time. It's not an easy interaction to pull off, but you saw that Inthrill did it at least twice there, once with the Skellies, once with the Fire Spirit. So that was some nice fancy footwork, but it didn't really pay off for Inthrill. Was there anything that he could have done better in this game, or do you think he played it about as clean as he could have?
You know, I do want to start off by giving props to how he played the matchup, because yes, he was able to pull off those interactions. Yes, he flipped lanes. You know, he put his opponent in a position where he needed to delivery on the drill instead of on top of the support troops. So he did kind of everything he was supposed to. I don't know if there's really anything I can say other than that. His opponent cycles too quickly. Maybe the fireball was an errant fireball and that wasn't really necessary. So, you know, there's one or two missteps, but overall he played a great game and he did a lot of things that, you know, us casters, but also just, you know, teammates or, you know, opposing pro players would say, oh, you should be doing this in this matchup. He did all that. He just, it wasn't enough. Adnan is too special of a player to, you know, let that kind of matchup slide.
Yeah, I see someone in the chat going, dude, it was beginning to be a really close game there from Rainy Bear. And yeah, it really was. I mean, Inthrill did do all of the things correctly that he needed to. I just, again, think that matchup is a really, really tough one from someone that plays against it a lot. Being a mortar player, doesn't really matter per variant. Sometimes the faster cycle one can help. Sometimes one with guards can be really effective because then you have a better way to get that hog damage mitigated and not maybe having to spend as much to beat the cycle just a little bit. But we can already see here Adnan going with Dark Goblin plus Cannon Cart. Bottom of your screen, Inthrill going to go to Lava Hound. So we'll see how these guys stack up. That Dark Goblin is going to be the it factor for Adnan, seeing how much value it can get and how he can use the Dark Goblin and the Bat synergistically to make the arrows from Inthrill have to be pick and chosen. And then obviously whichever unit stays alive, whether it's the guards or the bats, either one of them should then be able to get exponential value on top of the Lava Hound when it does come in. So here we go. Game number 2 underway. Adnan, top of your screen, 2860 is his lowest tower. Down at the bottom, Inthrill stops these Skellies with his Tombstone. 2716 is where he stands.
That was a really impressive fireball. To get it out before the Skeleton Dragons get those second coughs.
Yeah, whatever, belches, coughs, whatever they are.
That's the word I was looking for. Yes, belches. That's the word I was looking for. I mean, you have to be very, very quick. So that was really impressive. Right there, great knowledge. No Tombstone and Cycle. You know your opponent only has 1 or 2 cards. Maybe force out a Miner, maybe force out a Skeleton King. So yes, we see the Skeleton King plus the Flying Machine. Can he defend this properly? With a spam deck, it should be fairly easy for him to do that.
Flying Machine stays alive with that. With the Skeleton King there to tank. Dark Goblin gets that final little shot in to clean up the Flying Machine. Now a high Mega Minion snipe that Dark Goblin. Nice play there. Arrows out of cycle now. We'll see if Adnan wants to use his Skarmy plus Skeleton King combo. If he wants to use... he just decides to go aggressive here with the Mortar. Not a bad play, but Tombstone back to cycle.
So the Mortar to get the Tombstone out of cycle, Miner will come down, and it will be able to do the damage that he needs, so it's not going to be a problem. How does he want to respond? Responds with the Skarmy, so we should see the Skeleton King cycled at the bridge, forcing out the opposing Skeleton King. It's going to be Skeleton King on Skeleton King. Which one can put in more work? Fireball could come down, but no, we see the complete reset from Adnan. Probably a great idea. He doesn't want to spend too much elixir, and these defenses are always somewhat easy when you have Dark Goblin and when you have Bats.
And, you know, I like the call there on Fireball could come out. Fireball did eventually end up coming out. It was just about Adnan recognizing, I'm not going to get any power damage. Let's see if I get any more true value. You see Dark Goblin played here to the right-hand lane, going to help assist those Skeleton Dragons coming off the board. Mortar goes down left-hand side as Skeleton King plus Dark Goblin on the right. Arrows clean up the Dark Goblin. Fireball cleans up the Flying Machine. Mortar will connect on tower here on the left-hand side, but a pretty solid push coming down the right-hand lane here. Adnan will be back to Fireball relatively soon. He might already be back to it. That's going to come in, trying to use everything he can other than spell value to create a little bit of true presence. But a really nice overwhelm there from Inthril.
Yeah, you have to think, I mean, honestly, I thought tower was going down right there. So first of all, just pretty solid defense overall to even just stay alive at all. But you have to think that maybe going Mortar opposite lane, using the Fireball, using, you know, it might be a little bit too much. And so I kind of want to see him perhaps change up some of his pushes. I don't think using Mortar offensively the way he's using it is the correct play.
Probably going to see a really low Dark Goblin here. Fireball comes in for Adnan, but straight overwhelm from Inthril. Great plays there. Dark Goblin not played in defense there because there was just too much to focus on. Not going to be able to get to the Lava Hound. Adnan had to think bigger than that. He goes Fireball instead to help clean up. It just wasn't enough. You know, Skeleton King came down to help soak up. That's the thing about the Skeleton King. Yes, it does splash damage. Yes, it does a good job of cleaning up those skellies, but also when they get swarmed, he doesn't really know where to target. Where he swings that big mallet, it's not always going to be the most opportune spot to clean up the most skeletons. So really nice game number 2 there, and we're going to game 3. No surprises in this opening set of our semifinals.
You know what? I will say it. I'm switching my vote. I think
really?
Game number 3 is going to be for Inthril. Yes.
What's changed for you?
I mean, the consistency of his gameplay has been phenomenal, always giving himself a chance, but like, you know, in game number 2, the Mortar was played, it was Flying Machine in response every single time. Oh, then, you know, it forces out the Fireball, but you already have the Tombstone skeleton cycled, so it's not really going to get it to tower, and it's not really going to do anything. He always had it so that his Skeleton King was, you know, the second Skeleton King that's popping its ability, so his skeletons, you know, put in more work than the opposing skeletons. Everything he did right there was perfection, and it's a level that is kind of scary from a player that I haven't really heard of. I feel like I need to do my homework, try and, you know, follow him on Twitter, try and get his friend link or something, because what I've witnessed here has been something truly special.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I really do love the point that you make about how his defenses were always not only the smartest plays at the time, but it just continued to bait out Adnan to spending things where he didn't want to, right? The Dark Goblins we saw regularly cycled off to the left-hand side because he didn't want to give too much arrow value. So then Inthril goes, okay, cool. I'm just going to continue to min-max. I'm going to take damage from the Dark Goblin. I'm going to take damage from the, you know, 1 or 2 skeleton dragons that or excuse me, 1 or 2 of the skellies that might break on through, whatever it might be. And then I finally will find the opportunity to get a real Lava Hound push down. And so what happened was we saw a really good push from Inthril come in that made Adnan have to overspend. And that was the reason he was able to finally start to build those true lava pushes. And then it was great cleanups, right? Like you said, the Tombstone was always in cycle to deal with those offensive mortars, or when, you know, ground cards weren't in cycle, the Tombstone was there to help deal with ground pushes that came across. And then if Tombstone was not in cycle, we saw that miner come out on top of that cannon card. So really great decision making from the Polish player in Inthril. And now both of them backed against their wall. This is a single elimination bracket. It's a best of 3 until we get to grand finals. So we're going to hop into game 3 right now. And just a quick reminder for what is available and what is not available. I'll let you guys I'll remind you guys of what we just saw. So game 1, Adnan uses Log, Earthquake is his spells, Hog Rider is his condition, and Ultra Queen as his champion. Game number 2, he loses his skeleton. Is available for Adnan. However, it is off the board for Inthril. Along with Inthril's cards that are unavailable, it's a lot of stuff you'll see in the skies, so it looks like he's going to go to the ground. And Baby Dragon, a bit of a surprise after seeing Royal Ghost plus Giant Dog.
I feel like we consistently see when you know your opponent is going to be using Skeleton King, players often use the Giant Skeleton. And I don't know if that's like, if everybody's decided that that is how they want to approach that kind of matchup, but it does seem to consistently be very effective on defense. So it's cool to see that everybody has recognized that that seems to be the way they want to approach when you know your opponent is going to be using Skeleton King.
Yeah, Skeleton King really does kind of feel like well, I was going to say he won the champion battle, but, you know, between the Skeleton King, the Archer Queen, and the Golden Knight, I think it's really just up to you and your playstyle. So, Electro Wizard and Baby Dragon to help do some damage on this Royal Giant, which Adnan kind of sneaks on through. Not a lot of defense there, not a lot of single target DPS, but at least the stun helps mitigate some of that damage. Now a lightning down defensively, really nice lightning. And the only thing that Inthril gets out of that is just one Baby Dragon Belch and a Goblin Drill connection, 26-27 to 20-32.
Yeah, that was not the most difficult defense. You're just throwing a lightning and a bar barrel, but just really smart defense. The timing was great. Everything was great. And it allows you to somewhat overextend with an RG. When you have that lightning in your back pocket, you know that you don't have to worry. So it makes me think, you know, maybe should you know, Inthril potentially waited, maybe tried to go, you know, drill late or drill high. That could have been a play. But right here, we see it again. Lightning coming down. This lightning is getting so much value every time it gets played.
Yeah, that lightning value coupled with Fisherman and, of course, the extract from the Tombstone is making this deck for Inthril really difficult to break through with. However, when you look at what the responses are to that Goblin Drill, they're also plentiful for Adnan. You have the Skeleton King that can be played super low. If he's out of cycle or up higher, you can defend with a barrel plus another witch. You can just a barrel, you can do a barrel and Fisherman. So there's a lot of great options. You see here Adnan opting to use that barrel to try to snipe off the fourth card. That time he was able to get the Electro Wizard off the board. Two Mother Witches back up.
Wow, and tries to get, and that should, no, doesn't get the King Tower activation, but that was a really nice lightning. Forces out a useless NATO because he was trying to stack, or he was trying to use the NATO in conjunction with the Golden Knight dash. Just didn't work out for him, wasn't able to pull that off.
So a minute and 30 seconds remain here in our overtime of Game 3. This is Game 1 of our semifinals. One of these guys will be going home with a nice little paycheck. The other one will be moving on to our grand finals. Where Furkan or Pandora will be their opponent. As Inthril trying to create some offense, 18-27, 23-66.
And he is just struggling to get any kind of offensive pressure going. These defensive lightnings, a Tombstone, Fisherman, and then the misplaced Goblin Drill. I mean, that even gets taken out right there and allows the Mother Witch to get even more value. Just not what he's looking for. Beautiful setup, beautiful push. Adnan taking game number 3. And I wish I didn't change who I expected to win.
Yeah, I mean, Adnan just played that really, really nicely. Great patience, turning those counter pushes into great offensives, you know, never getting too aggressive with his Royal Giant. And then, you know, some small misplays there for some overspends early on, some kind of lackluster defenses. And then, of course, there at the very end, NATO's not in cycle. Drill comes down late. Drill comes offset, so the Royal Giant doesn't get reset. Then the Royal Giant does get reset because of the Electro Wizard, but then there's no Drill to tank for it because of the pile up behind that RG. And once again, the NATO still out of cycle, so that E was slow and no good single target DPS kind of spelled disaster for Inthril, who will be playing in our third place matchup, although that will be done off of camera, as that'll be going on during our grand finals, our best of 5 grand finals. So we'll still have to see if Inthril ends up in 3rd or 4th place as we hop over to the other side of our bracket, where Pandora and Furkan will be playing to see who's going to be going to the grand finals. And both of them, this is a much tougher conversation when it comes down to who do you think is going to play better, who do you think is going to come out on top. AC, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. You don't have to pick a winner, but based off of what you've seen today, are you leaning in any direction, or is there anything that really stands out to you?
You know, if Pandora had beaten Hugo when Hugo is running Mortar or any of those, you know, a Royal Hogs deck, RG, whatever, you know, whatever it may be, I would tend to lean with Pandora, because Pandora, you know, throughout his career, there was a good 9-month period where he was considered a top 3 player in the world. He was consistently finishing top 10. Everybody had, you know, the utmost respect for who he was as a player. He just never, there was no day off for Pandora during that period. But, you know, Furkan currently is having, you know, that go. You know, he isn't having a day off. He's playing phenomenally every single time. Even when he loses, he's playing well. Like, he lost against Mini, but he didn't play poorly, like necessarily that poorly. It was just, Mini's also a great player, so it's hard when you don't have the correct matchup. So I have to lean for Furkan, even though I love Pandora, and I think he's a great player. Furkan has been special this tournament.
Yeah, well, we'll see as we're about to hop into game number 1 here between Furkan and Pandora. In Pandora's previous set against Hugo, he ran 3M in game 1. Not going to be the case here, as we see wall breakers and skeletons out early on. Furkan going to the skies, and this is someone who was kind of their one-trick claim to fame initially was they were a great Lava Hound player. Haven't seen Furkan play any Lava thus far in the competition, unless I'm forgetting yesterday. He's been leaning a lot more towards Mortar, a lot more towards Hog Rider. He's played a little bit of Royal Giant, things like that. So we shall see how the Great Lava player fares against this Goblin Drill Wall Breakers deck. One thing is that there's probably not a barrel or a log in this deck, definitely now that we see Zap come out. So that's one of the things that we talked about a good amount yesterday, AC, and the fact that, you know, the Drill Wall Breakers combination, while it is popular, there's just so much opportunity for incredible value logs.
Absolutely, and this is an interesting deck from Furkan. I mean, the last card should be Fireball and, you know, potentially Guards or something, and so you've got strong defense, but Pandora's defense is the one that is really scary. You have the Magic Archer, you have the NATO, you have the Inferno Tower, so you have 1,000 answers for these Lavas, and you just, you know, the reason why people stopped using Inferno Dragon is because the offensive potential, and okay, not Fireball, going to be using arrows. The offensive potential when you have Inferno Dragon is significantly weaker than any other variation you could possibly use.
Nice NATO there to add a little bit more damage and give this Magic Archer just a little bit more legs. Now the Magic Archer has to be responded to instead. Opts to go Lava Hound in the back. So Magic Archer shots will come in. Valkyrie comes down to help make sure this drill doesn't get too much damage, but that Valkyrie will be in front of the Lava Hound. So not exactly the order that Furkan would like, but not the end of the world. And this is just going to be straight up classic Lava Loon with a bit of a twist in terms of the support cards.
Beautiful. I love that he's using Lava Loon instead of it being Lava Guards, but I hate that this is the matchup that he has to go against. Beautiful NATO going to, you know, force out the reset from Furkan, but you don't have a lot of opportunities to reset anymore. These wall breakers, you're going to be cycling Magic Archers like crazy because you have to be wasting the Zap and the arrows on the Inferno Towers and just every other troop. So this is just a prime position for Pandora. Can he get the Zap retarget? Can he get the Loon potentially? This is his one and final last attempt.
The double Lava Hound comes down, so that second Lava Hound is actually tanking for the first one. Now you need to get a balloon in, but that Golden Knight on the tower, great dash there by Pandora, sees his opening and takes it. A great game number 1, and it felt like it was just in time. Furkan had 2 lavas on the board, both at roughly half health, balloon in cycle, arrows plus zap in cycle, so would have been able to create quite a bit of offensive presence, but just in time is Pandora. That Golden Knight sneaks on through.
Yeah, that was a great game overall. I loved the pressure. He defended exactly how he should. You know, I was wondering if he was going to try and use the Tornado to pull the Loon to the King Tower, but no, he recognized that the Inferno Tower was going to be able to kill off the Loon and then still be able to put in work on the Lava. So just really smart plays, really, you know, incredible knowledge of just how each interaction would go. And then, yeah, you know, the magic archers were used to perfection, got a little bit of damage, but also just forced out responses. And, you know, the magic archer is always a secondary or, you know, sometimes a primary win condition. But right there, it wasn't necessarily used that way. It was just to try and make your opponent just feel overwhelmed. And that's exactly what it did. It allowed his drills and it allowed his wall breakers to get the value that they needed to get.
Yeah, you know, arrows and zap is a great way to clean up those magic archers, but as you were talking about, that zap had to be saved for the Inferno Tower, and Pandora did a really good job of making sure that if that zap was going to come down, it wasn't also going to be able to hit the magic archers that stacked up. And then to your other point, talking about the magic archer being such a strong win condition in this deck and in general, using the magic archer offensively when necessary, but never forcing it. And then, of course, using it defensively over and over towards the end of that game. Inferno Tower was great. And as I saw some people in the chat talking about, you know, don't forget about that early King Tower activation, right? That NATO to King, activating that King Tower really, really does help. Now, King Tower and Princess Tower on top of a Lava Hound, you know, fine, good to have the additional DPS. You pull those units to the middle that are much more threatening, like the balloon with the Inferno, and then even with the zap coming down, the reset, what have you, that King Tower being able to assist a bit was really, really important. So shout out to the chat for pointing that out as well. And shout out to Pandora for playing a really, really great game. The key to victory was the Magic Archer, and he used it to absolute perfection. Furkan, haven't seen him go to lava much. Obviously, still available, but I don't know if he goes back to the well there. I think he's had much more success playing other decks that are much more popular in the meta, and even when it comes to Lava Hound decks, that version that we just saw is not the not even, I'd say, top 2 most popular lava decks. Lava Loon has just really not been as effective ever since they got rid of some of that drop damage.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it all the time, but I really love the Lava Skeleton King version. I think it's by far the strongest, and I think that's really what you have to use, because even when you go against the Inferno Tower decks, even when you go against the Magic Archer, the Archer Queen, whatever it is, however they want to defend it, you still have that shot, because you have 3 or 4 different ways to win. You can win off skeleton ability, you can win off just the lavas themselves, the miner in the back, plus the chip damage from the pups. There's 1,000 different ways. With Lava Loon, you win by a Loon, and if your opponent has a NATO and Inferno Tower, it's very difficult.
So nice high cannon here to help assist with some of the DPS necessary to clean up the Giant Skeleton plus the Archer Queen. So it's going to be Hog EQ, most popular version with Giant Skeleton and Archer Queen, going up against probably E-Giant Mirror with what we see so far. But, you know, sometimes those last couple cards are actually not even the last couple cards. We knew it was going to be E-Giant. Sometimes Mirror is not always the way to go, but most likely will be here.
And that's going to be a really nice hog, and it forces out your opponent to not be able to double E-Giant. And so I'm guessing that was the play he was trying to make. Right here, that's an interesting play. He could have gotten tower damage on the right side, the right-hand crown tower. Instead, goes just in the middle and just going to get a little bit of damage. Both towers would be about at 2,800 HP. Instead, the right tower is still perfectly healthy.
Yeah, just a small little, I guess, mistake, if you want to call it that. On top of that, I don't know how that ability felt like a good call, but Pandora decides to pull the trigger on it. Guards come out, and then a straight path for that E-Giant to get on top of the tower. Giant Skeleton going to be there to assist. But as you guys can see, that pile up of damage happens so incredibly quickly with the Electro Giant on tower.
And this is just incredible how much success he's had with it. That is a great cannon. You have to be worried about it not getting pulled correctly, but instead, not going to worry, because even if it hadn't, he was still going to NATO it to the King Tower. So just really great awareness on Furkan's end. And now it's going to be, how does he want to approach this? Does he want to go with the Earthquakes and then double Earthquake at the end? We see the IE Giant placed in response on the Archer Queen. Every time he plays an E-Giant, that's a 2 elixir E-Giant when it's placed on an Archer Queen. So we will see that time and time again.
And there's the second E-Giant coming down right in the face of that Giant Skeleton level 13. So it's going to be great work in terms of the Giant Skeleton, the guards, and now still going to get on top of tower with the second Giant Skeleton coming down. Earthquake comes in, and an easy game 2 win here for Furkan. Not a good matchup, especially because, you know, that is a Earthquake instead of a Lightning. So the cannons from Pandora are going to be that much less effective. And this is a lot of what Clash Royale looks like these days on mid-ladder and even up into the 7Ks is just E-Giants a-flying. And you can see why. So very effective, even at the highest level.
You know, it's interesting. We were watching the, it was like 2 sets ago or something, and I think it was Furkan's set. And then a hog deck was used, and we were saying, oh, well, you know, he should be using the giant skeleton version because you can just plop the giant skeleton in front and then it's just going to take everything out. And we are coming to realize that maybe it's not that simple. Maybe he's quite good at the deck and he just knows how to play.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that is definitely what feels like the strongest version of Hog Rider out there, Hog EQ with Giant Skeleton and Archer Queen. It just seems after kind of weeks now of the new meta, this is really the best place to go if Hog EQ is your win condition of choice. But then you run into this force that is Electro Giant, and it is a very tough matchup conversation because Electro Giant is so matchup dependent. You can obviously play through tough matchups, and I think a big part of playing through those tough matchups, we've seen the shift from Rocket in this deck going to Earthquake. It speeds up your cycle, and mirrored Earthquakes, while they don't do as much damage as they did for a moment, they still do stack up pretty quickly. And it's also a lot easier when you're not sure what to play. You obviously don't want to just drop an E-Giant down in the back. You sometimes don't even want to drop a Bomber down in the back in the lane that you want to work towards because it lets your opponent kind of look at the landscape of what could be coming down the lane, and it sets them up for a really great defense. That being swapped for Earthquake, just speeding things up, and then of course having the ability to, all right, I don't really have a great play right now, so instead of putting Elixir on the board that isn't going to get much use, or putting Elixir on the board that I'm going to need maybe on an Electro Giant push, let's just cycle Earthquakes, right? It's still always a good play when you have nothing else to do, especially in double Elixir and 100% in triple Elixir. And on top of that, you don't want to use the NATO as a cycle card because it's just too necessary on offensive pushes to clean up defensive units, or even on just helping out with defense.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it. The cannon interaction where you go Giant Skeleton, then Hog behind. The Giant Skeleton, 45% of the time, will push the Hog to the side and not have the Hog out of the cannon. So I got a little bit worried, and then I realized he's got NATO as well. He's got the cannon, he's got the NATO, he has every single answer that he needs. So it ended up still going to the cannon, but even if it hadn't, he would have just gone to the King Tower. So it really didn't matter. The Tornado is such a powerful card in that deck. It's always going to give up a ton of damage, but it often gives up a ton of damage to the King Tower. And at that point, you've already locked up the game. You've already gotten your one good push in that you need. And yeah, 2 strong pushes, 2 pushes where all he did was just E-Giant at the bridge, E-Giant, you know, close to the bridge. And the Giant Skeletons, I really thought that they were going to change the matchup, flip it, and they did not do that. Instead, it looked like it made it even more difficult, which is not something we see often.
Yeah, you know, and Furkan recognized the 2 most important things that you can kind of pick apart in that deck from Adnan, and one of them is the Archer Queen single target DPS is something that you don't want to have protected down the lane that can turn into a counter push, you know, cleaning up those E-Giants and then being able to support the Hogs. So you saw, like you called out during the game, that's a 2 Elixir Electro Giant being played right on top of Archer Queens, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is because he's so confident in his defense, he's able to overspend with those Electro Giants on top of Archer Queens because he knows, Furkan knows, that he can really control those Giant Skeletons with ease, right? With a lot less Elixir, with a lot more cycle cards, with using his units in a way that makes it so that Giant Skeleton isn't a true threat, so that the main threat, the Hog Rider, when you talk about tower damage, was really a non-factor. Like you said, the best players in the game, they're going to use that Giant Skeleton body block to make sure that Hog Rider gets on the tower instead of the cannon. But, you know, already thinking about that was Furkan. He has the cannon, he has the NATO, he has all the answers he needs. So not the best matchup in terms of Adnan going up against Furkan's NATO plus cannon plus the body blocking, but also really smart decision making there in game number 2. So here we go. Game number 3 coming your way. This is a best of 3, and we are going to decide who the second player in our grand finals is going to be. For our grand finals, it's going to be a best of 5. It'll be the first best of 5 that we get to witness in the Royale Masters format, which is going to be a super fun conversation to have when we get there. But first, game number 3 here. Furkan, bottom of your screen, going with Golem. Pandora at the top, looking like, I was going to say, maybe minor lava, but that Knight, just a little bit of a twist in the system.
The lava, or yeah, the Knight does change that. And right here we see Golem once again. And it is so stressful to watch because, you know, you have the mortar, you have the guards, and already that's just too strong of a defense. You're not going to get past that. So not only is it odd to see, you know, Golem just in general in these competitions, especially because we've seen the limited success that they've had, but also to use it, the second card already, it's the reason why it was okay with doing Golem first play, why that was such a serious, meta-defining method of game or of playing, was because you had that Night Witch and you had that insane pressure with the Night Witch bats plus the Golem. Right here, you don't have that anymore. So to see it used already is pretty odd.
Yeah, I mean, a really, really aggressive single elixir Golem there. Not a lot of cards played out on either side. Mega Minion maybe being out of cycle was something that Furkan goes, okay, that's a great single target DPS card. Miner plus Mega Minion, maybe he thinks it's Lava Hound, and maybe that's the reason he thought that Golem would be a good play that early on. But to his unfortunate discovery, it was not Lava Hound. It was instead this Miner log mortar deck. I don't know why I said log, but that's how I got played.
Yeah, that is a. I mean, it is correct.
It is in the deck. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not lying to you guys here.
So we see the cannon cart be played and already down 1200 HP. Cannon cart will be able to take out the Archer Queen with the help of the Crown Tower. Once it comes back, and no, the Archer Queen still needs another response. We see the Golem be plopped down, but you have the Mortar and you have the Archer Queen, you have the Mega Minion guards. It is hard to get past this deck. I don't know how he's going to do it. He's going to try and use troops instead of spells. That can be an effective method sometimes, but I think the defensive troops for Pandora are just too strong for him to get past if he doesn't use a big spell.
Yeah, and this really is Pandora's game to lose. The amount of control that he has, the amount of single target DPS. You talk about the guards coupled with the Mega Minion, with that Archer Queen, the ability to get mortars down to keep that Golem at bay. There really should be no way that Furkan takes this game. And for the first time in a couple days, we're seeing Furkan struggle. He has not lost a set yet. He was one of our perfect players through our qualifiers yesterday, and now running into a brick wall with Mortar. And, you know, we talk about biases up in the booth. Golem is definitely one of my least favorite matchups because of back in the day, like you talked about, that Night Witch push behind just to make it so difficult. Fireball plus Log was a way to do it. You know, Poison was obviously a really nice card to have, but it's just not the same story anymore. And we're seeing that in practice right now. Nice high AQ to snipe that Mega Minion, and that Mega Minion just is not getting the value that Furkan needs.
Archer Queen almost played so perfectly where it targets the Cannon Cart after targeting the Mega Minion. Instead, Cannon Cart is going to stay alive. Baby Dragon plus Cannon Cart going to be able to do a little bit of work. Golem played to try and take the aggro of the swings of the Miner. Doesn't work out that way. Can the Baby Dragon stay out of the range? It does not. Crown Tower is going to be, I mean, Pandora, look, we're saying all this about just the Golem itself, but Pandora is playing this phenomenally. Yes. Archer Queens going invisible when they need to, finding the right troops to target, guards placed correctly. Mini P.E.K.K.A not a problem when you place the Knight exactly how he's placing it. So he's doing everything he needs to. Overall, just not a huge fan of this, and we see him give up with 26 seconds. Furkan's run is going to be over.
Yeah, and you know, it's just a really tough draw there in terms of what Furkan decided to play in that game spell-wise, right? He used Mirror, Earthquake, NATO in game number 1. So already without Tornado, Golem just is not quite as effective, especially when you talk about Baby Dragon being in the mix. But the other side of it was we were wondering, at least I was wondering for that entirety of the game, what is your 8th card? What is your big spell? Is it Rocket? Because you're not playing it, and it makes sense because Rocket's not going to get a lot of value. It's clearly not Lightning, which is what it needed to be. Right, he really, really needed the Lightning in that deck. He would have been able to catch those high AQs with the mortars, or you would have seen Pandora have to play those Archer Queens off to the other side of the Princess Tower, mortar to the center, and it would have just split up the way that he was playing his troops. Then maybe the Mini P.E.K.K.A gets a little bit more value, because you think that then, all right, if the Archer Queen is offset to the other side, that means the guards need to go down on top of the Golem, so now maybe the Mini P.E.K.K.A can cruise on through. But not having the NATO, not having the Lightning, having Fireball come out instead very, very late in the game, you saw why Furkin just never had an opportunity to play his big spell. I understand because Fireball is such a good card. You know, we saw Royal Hogs more yesterday. We saw Fireball's necessary draw in terms of running into the Mother Witch and the Mother Witch getting a lot of value. But I honestly think if you don't have NATO in this matchup, I think you need Lightning. I mean, I really do. You can't NATO Fireball stuff together. Your NATO is not there to pull units in like the guards to get some splash damage from the baby, and that Lightning is really going to be the only way for you to break through the most popular buildings in the game right now, which the most popular ones are Inferno and Mortar.
Yeah, I'm looking at his deck right now. You have the Cannon Cart, the Mini P.E.K.K.A, the guards. That trio in terms of ground support is going to be able to defend pretty much anything. So. Yeah. At that point, you need offensive pressure. The other 5 cards need to be about offensive pressure. So you need the Lightning, you need the Golem, you need the Log, or potentially even the arrows, the Mega Minion, but also, you know, we could even, instead of like a Mega Minion, go like Flying Machine, Skeleton Dragons, E-Dragon. There's a lot of opportunities for you to just go full out offense for the other 5 cards. And so the fact that he went Fireball, Mega Minion, Baby Dragon, Log, I really don't like the synergy between those cards, knowing your opponent has a Mortar deck available to them. What did Pandora win with? Pandora won
with Electro Giant. Or excuse me, Furkan or Pandora?
Pandora
won with Golden Knight, Magic Archer, Fireball, Goblin Drill, NATO early on.
Yeah, and so everything is available to him for a Mortar deck, and you know your opponent knows that you use heavy tank decks. It seems like an obvious play to know your opponent is going to try and control the pace of the game, control how the game goes, and that deck just doesn't make a lot of sense for game number 3.
Let's take a look here at our bracket. From 1,100 players down to 2. We have our grand finals as this populates. Furkan and Inthril will be battling it out to see who is 3rd place, who is 4th place. Mostly about prize money and points, but it's all about what you see at the top of your screen. It hurts. Who is this guy? How has he played so well in Group A? Well, it's Trainer Adnan. No surprise there when you figure out who it is. He's gone 6-3 on the day. Pandora on the other side of the bracket goes 2-1 over Furkan. 2-1 over Hugo, and 2-0 over Fedez. So a really, really nice showing from both of these guys. They've ran into a little bit of trouble along the way, which is what you hope to see when you get into your finals.
So I at this point, I want to do another prediction just because I'm now 0-2. And so I want to try and go the perfect 0-3 as a caster. So I'm
just like in that 2v2 set, right?
So let's see. I think Pandora's played really well. I think both of his opponents have just made huge mistakes. On the other hand, Adnan, I don't know if, well, he beat Inthril, and Inthril was playing phenomenally as well.
Yeah.
But I still, it feels like everything's going well for Pandora, and I don't know why, but I want to lean towards Pandora. This is not like one of those things where it's like I choose the opposite of who I actually believe,
right? Just
to try and, you know, counteract what's happening today. But I'm gonna say it. I think Pandora is going to win. Things are working out for him. That game number 3 was perfection. It's not the most difficult task when you're as talented as he is and going against the Golem deck. but he didn't overextend. The Archer Queens were placed perfectly. There was like one misstep in his entire game, and it was a misstep where I was shocked that I actually targeted a different troop. So yeah, I'm gonna lean towards Pandora for this one.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those situations where if you want to be the best in the world, you need to have a little bit of luck. And it does seem like Pandora has had more luck today than Adnan, whereas it feels like Adnan has had to just do what you need to do a lot of the time, which is just play perfect Clash Royale, play through tough matchups, recollect after you drop game 1 or game number 2, and then send it on through to take that game number 3. I agree. It feels like at least the Clash Royale gods are leaning in favor of Pandora, but there's really no way to ever bet against trainer Adnan, especially after what we have seen so far today here in our grand finals. Remember, guys, this is a best of 5 set here in our grand finals. In the Royale Masters format, it is going to be incredibly interesting to see what's played in games 3, 4, and 5. Already the conversation happens a lot about games 3, but this is new territory for us in games 4 and games 5. Remember, if you get to game 4, that means that there has been wins on both sides, and if you get to game 5, that means there's been 2 wins on either side of the board, which means 16 cards are not available. So that's going to be the most interesting thing to be thrown into the mix here. I'm really excited to see how that plays out as we get towards our grand finals. Points on the line, money on the line, and those qualification points are so very important. If you can qualify for the playoffs here in the Royale Masters Gold Edition before you have to get to that last chance qualifier, it takes a huge load off of your back. It makes it so that you are just able to sit back, watch that. No, not as many nerves, especially here in the first qualifiers. I think this is probably the lowest stakes situation, but if you can stack points early on, that is the true goal here at Royale Masters. Those 3 weeks of qualifiers are so very important. So now that we're about to go into our grand finals, based off of what we've seen over the last 2 days and what we've seen throughout the day today, what do you not want to see from either of these players?
Okay, so I feel like the first response of mine is going to be pretty obvious. I'm sick of seeing Golem. I don't think that could be the play. On the other hand, I want to see Royal Hogs be used. I don't think that we've seen that enough. I don't like the weird variations of Lava. Lava Skeleton King is always going to be a play. And then I do want to see these players kind of stick to their roots. You have a lot of potential to... even if you get hard countered once, if it's one of your best decks, you can work through a hard counter at least once of the 2 games if you're going to repeat that kind of deck. So it allows more freedom to the players that have one tricked, because they can get around those hard counters at least once out of, the 2 or 3 games that they're going to play it.
So we see Fishboy with Zappy's bottom of your screen. Could still be Royal Giant. And the rare Mega Knight comes out. You were talking about how much you love this style of deck yesterday when it played correctly. Wall Breakers plus Mega Knight usually doesn't have a big spell. Usually it's just Barrel. And on top of that will be most likely Zap, just because you need that reset sometimes to help with the Mega Knight tanking in case you run into something like an Inferno Tower or Inferno Dragon. We'll see if that's the way that this shakes out for Pandora. And then still here at the bottom of your screen, Giant Skeleton with those Zappies does still feel like Royal Giant. Usually, though, not coupled with the Archer Queen. Usually you'll see the Skeleton King in there instead, and it is going to be Zap from Pandora as he gets a little bit of damage on that right-hand side, 2994 to 2936.
So it's going to be interesting if Pandora is going to be using Knight or Bandit or Mini P.E.K.K.A. as his final card, or even potentially like an Archer Queen or some kind of hero. But the problem is when you use the Mega Knight deck, when you go against an RG deck or a Golem deck or an E-Giant deck, you just don't have the necessary DPS. And right here, I think he's going to really struggle when he gets those RG pushes. I don't know what he has in response for an RG at the bridge. I mean, just a lone RG at the bridge. I don't think he has the DPS to stop that.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't look like he has the DPS, and it also doesn't look like he has a building to hold it. So now we've seen RG set up in the back, as Adnan is probably recognizing the same things as us, whether it's at the bridge or in the back. In the back allows for a bigger defensive buildup. As you can see, Pandora stacking Musketeer behind that MK. But this Fishboy going to pull that MK away. Then the Mini P.E.K.K.A. comes in. So I really like the way that Pandora kind of looked and saw the landscape of what was most likely going to happen, and then uses his cards in the way that you need to. Mini P.E.K.K.A. behind to deal with the DPS, MK up high to get pulled by the Fishboy.
Wow, that was a great just A great setup right there. Uses the miner on top of the zappies, but doesn't zap the zappies in order to have them target the miner. So it just, you know, shovels it away quickly and effectively. I really like what he did there. And yes, he has the mini P.E.K.K.A, so yes, he has a chance. But this is the play. These are the plays that he needs to make.
Yeah.
I mean, this is brilliant. Mini P.E.K.K.A on the opposite side. Zappies get, you know, kind of crazy targeting. Mini P.E.K.K.A won't go to the king tower. It'll fall back, go to the giant skeleton. This is what he needs to do, and this is really, really great gameplay. I was talking about it because I think this might be the best play, and RG at the bridge is tough to stop, but now that he has the mini P.E.K.K.A and now that he has this damage advantage, that might not be the play that he wants to go with anymore.
And now the E-Spirit finally in the cycle where it needs to be to get on top of those bats, and now a scary push coming down the lane. Needs to get another Mega Knight down to make sure to tank for that mini P.E.K.K.A, which is most likely going to get pulled away. So MK does come down. 2 Fish Boys on the board, 2 Giant Skeletons. First one falls off. Royal Giant comes on through. And this is what you were talking about, Josh. A lot of this went Pandora's way early on, but now a really great Royal Giant connection with the Royal Giant stack up. And now a 3rd Royal Giant comes down. This one aggressively at the bridge. One shot comes in, but a excellent counter push comes down the lane. Fireball going to help clean everything up, and that's a really necessary fireball.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of pressure. Mini P.E.K.K.A placed on the right side, gonna follow that up. Oh, and that's going to be a really nice play. One of the wall breakers is going to connect, 2370. He's going to be going in on the right lane instead of the left lane. Just going to try and forget about it, but Adnan is too smart. Mini P.E.K.K.A comes down on defense, but Mini P.E.K.K.A won't be enough. RG gets 1 shot, 2 shots, and possibly a 3rd and a 4th. We see the 3rd and the 4th. Wow.
Yeah, that 4th shot coming in, and if we can in the replay booth, I'd love to see those 15 seconds that led up to that shot there. So maybe if we're at like 35 down to where we are now, I don't know if that's a possibility, but it would be really nice to kind of see how that played out. Really, really great recognition of the macro here from Adnan. Never, ever getting overwhelmed with the pushes, never letting those pushes that actually succeeded from Pandora, which were some really brilliant ones, never letting those get to his head, right? We saw wall breaker connections on one side. We saw a mini P.E.K.K.A push on the other with Miner. That was a moment where Pandora had a great hit on Adnan, and Adnan kind of just had to laugh it off. You saw the laughing king come out from him going, okay, man, all right, I see you creating space where you need to. I see you getting damage in early on, but there's really no way for you to stop the Royal Giant pileup at the bridge that we got there. Great plays from Adnan. And even though you called it out early on, Josh, you know, Royal Giants at the bridge, I don't disagree that that's the best play, but I really like that we didn't see that from Adnan until it was 100% the best way to go.
Absolutely. Once was it 3 Royal Giants? Am I going crazy?
Yeah, it was one in the back, a second one at the bridge, and then a 3rd one at the bridge.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, he did exactly what he needed to do. You know, if you're going to delay and wait till that double, triple elixir point of time, that's when, you know, you need that double RG push going. The mini P.E.K.K.As weren't a problem because you had the Fisherman's yanking them away. He got the DPS in, but then he fireballed on defense, so he didn't really have to worry about the counter push. I mean, everything was done perfectly by Adnan, but I will say this. A 2022 new edition of the dictionary will have never give up, and it will show Pandora. Because that man, throughout this tournament, the 3 Musketeers gameplay and then this gameplay right here, that man, I mean, spreading out his troops perfectly, going E-Barbs at the bridge, mini P.E.K.K.A at the bridge, minor interactions where you don't zap the zappies in order to have the miner take it out perfectly. Everything he could possibly do to give himself a shot was done well. It just wasn't enough because, again, his opponents are too strong, matchups are too good, and, I mean, it was pretty obvious how the game was going to turn out once the game really got underway, but there was several times where I was thinking this is the reason why it's only 80-20 and not 100-0 because of plays like this.
Let's take a look here at those final seconds as we wait for game 2 to get underway. Good call there up in the booth helping us out. We're at 35 seconds right now. We see those zappies getting some value on top of the mini P.E.K.K.A. You see the Giant Skeleton working down the lane. AC, I'm going to let you take over in this final 30.
Yeah, we see the Fisherman yank away the Mega Knight. The mini P.E.K.K.A is doing its absolute best, but there's the first shot. There's the second shot. Bomb is going to take the mini P.E.K.K.A away. Can't get it in time. 4 shots, 1500 HP, down to 300. He has the Fireball, has the Bar Barrel, doesn't even have to do that anymore. He can just defend with Fireball, defend with E-Spirit. Too clean. I mean, the deck is a perfect, you know, matchup for Adnan overall. I mean, the Fireballs, the E-Spirit, the Bar Barrel, I mean, it is not what you want to see when you're using Mega Knight Wall Breakers.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it there. You talk about early on in that game, the Electro Spirit kind of being caught in a weird cycle, never really being where Adnan needed to deal with those bats. Then he recognized, okay, so the bats are one of the biggest threats that I have to deal with in terms of DPS on the other side of the board. Let's make sure my Electro Spirit is there. Then when you looked at what happened with that giant skeleton really putting in work, coming down the lane, the bomb going off, that's what it was. I'm glad we got the replay. I appreciate you, Tasty, because that bomb going off pushes the mini P.E.K.K.A away, allows that final nail in the coffin shot to come in from the Royal Giant, and all things working correctly for Adnan. And then the last thing to add in that you touched on, Josh, was the late plays with the Fireball, right? The Fireball came out very, very late in this game, didn't show that card for a very long time, and then you saw how effective it was when it felt like he might be getting overwhelmed. We saw that mini P.E.K.K.A plus Wall Breakers plus Bats push come in, and E-Spirit and a Fireball to boot is all you need. Maybe one of the Bats survives. A Miner goes to the back of the tower. You don't have to worry about it. It's not going to be enough damage for you to not make up for with that min-maxing of getting the Royal Giant down in the opposite lane. So a beautiful game number one. And this starts the beginning of our conversation. Someone says, Andrew, please support Pandora too. Look, I will support absolutely anyone that is playing, except for maybe 2 players in the world. I'm just kidding. I don't feel that way. I'll support anyone playing. I do love Pandora. I think that he did a really good job, but I think AC really kind of broke that down for you guys about as perfectly as he could. Even in that 3 Musketeers match that he lost, even in this Wall Breakers Mega Knight deck that he lost with, he still played exceptional Clash Royale. But one thing that I've noticed in both those decks, they don't have an effective big spell. And I think that's something that you really might need in this era of Clash Royale. And talking about big spells, Pandora coming out with an early E-Giant, and it's going to be Earthquake instead of the Rocket here. Earthquake does seem to be the favored choice in spell now. Inferno Tower, Fire Spirit, Log, Dark Prince, these are all great ways to deal with what's behind those Electro Giant pushes, and most importantly, that Bomber. So Adnan not in a bad spot thus far in terms of matchup.
Really hoping that it's going to be the mirror variation. And see, the problem with that, and actually, I was going to touch on this. So when you're using that, and it looks like it's not going to be the mirror, so that's kind of unfortunate as a viewer, but good for Pandora, because when you're running a best of 3 and you get to repeat cards when you lose or when you win, you have that opportunity. Yes, you're getting rid of NATO, Earthquake, and Log, but there are still decks available to you. There are still Royal Hogs. You can use, you know, Rocket. You can use Fireball. There's still options available. But if you're doing a best of 5, even if you get to repeat cards when you lose, that is too many spells being used. And it's just not, there's no potential for that to be successful. I love that he's using the standard variation, the one that doesn't have mirror. Oh,
there it is. So mirror does come out, mirrored on top of that Inferno Tower. So the Inferno does still sizzle down that Electro Giant in time. Golden Knight kept at bay with some really well-played Skellies. And a very uncharacteristically poor NATO out of Pandora. And Adnan sees that wasted elixir as an opportunity to create a little bit of pressure. And that pressure is really important, not just because of the damage it's going to get from the Fire Spirit plus the Log, but now that Bomber is not where Pandora wants in this cycle.
And so it's looking like Adnan might be using the Rocket variation. Nope. Okay, just gonna be okay. So I said no mirror, and then I said Rocket, and then okay, just making sure that's what I was saying.
Now you know the pains of being up in the booth, man. When you think you've got it all figured out, they always throw a swerve your way. Skelly's gonna keep that Inferno Dragon caught up at the river, but does not get within Princess Tower range. Inferno Dragon now soaking up the sizzle from that Inferno. Double Earthquake comes in, and now some defense needs to be played on that left-hand side, but the Dark Prince puts in work opposite lane. now trying to put something together is Pandora. Doesn't want to go down 2-0, and this is enough. Now, it doesn't feel like it because there's so much damage on that tower, but the E-Giant very healthy. Golden Knight's still alive. Inferno Dragon doesn't get hit by that Royal delivery, but the Royal Recruit should be enough to distract. Miner goes into the tower again, but caught by the cannon. Huge plays in both directions.
E-Giant will come down. Inferno Tower won't be placed directly on top. We see it all the way off to the side. Needs the double Earthquake. Double Earthquake not coming down in time. E-Giant will get eaten alive. That should be game. Adnan struggled for a bit. There was a 30-second period where it was anybody's game, but Adnan too successful on defense. 2-0 in a best of 5, a brilliant spot for the man.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point that needed to be made, AC, was talking about the defense of Adnan in both of these opening 2 games. Beautiful stuff in game 1, excellent stuff in game number 2. That Dark Prince going down the lane on the right-hand side, I think it was cycled in the back to help assist with Inferno Dragon defense for that one Inferno that stayed alive. You saw there was 2 Infernos out for a moment. However, neither the Inferno or the Bomber, E-Giant already off to the other side. Nothing there to help with that Dark Prince. Dark Prince comes down the lane to the right-hand side, creates a ton of offense for Adnan. And now, like you said, not where you want to be in a best of 5. Already up 2-0 is trainer Adnan, and this is a very rough spot for Pandora to be in. The only thing that Pandora gets to latch onto now is the fact that his opponent doesn't have 16 cards available to play, whereas Pandora still has the world as his oyster. So game number 1, Adnan uses Fireball, Bar Barrel, Fisherman, E-Spirit, Archer Queen, Royal Giant, Giant Skeleton, and Zappies. Game number 2, Adnan goes Inferno Tower, Dark Prince, Poison, Log, Fire Spirit. So the first thing that comes into my mind when you see that Poison and Fireball and Log and Barrel are out of cycle, how do you abuse those cards being out? And I honestly think one of the best calls could be that Royal Recruit's Royal Hogs deck, because you imagine that arrows should be in the deck for Adnan. It does seem like he does need to go to arrows just in case bait is what his opponent comes out with. We've seen bait mirror bait with Dark Goblin get so much value when all of these spells are no longer in play. So it does feel like a necessity to get arrows in there. Any thoughts on this breakdown, AC?
You know, okay, first of all, love the call with Royal Hogs. That's exactly what I was thinking. No delivery, no Fireball, no Poison, no Log, no Bar Barrel. And then on the opposite end, you know, for Adnan, I wouldn't mind seeing, you know, we saw the Giant Skeleton Graveyard deck. There are potential Graveyard decks where you can use, you know, Snowball plus Arrows, Graveyard, and then those defenses are oftentimes really strong, and the way the defenses are set up, it allows you to not use those big spells. And usually when you don't have a big spell, it's like, oh, well, if I go against a deck where I need a big spell, I'm going to be in trouble. But those Giant Skeleton Graveyard decks with the Snowball, Arrows, you know, those specific 2 cards together, that's kind of a big spell almost. Right. And so if he uses that, I will probably, I don't know what I'll do, but I will be a very happy man.
Yeah, and Adnan is a guy that has liked to lean on Hog EQ. Obviously not going to be an option with Earthquake out of cycle here. And then when you look, and Log being out too, both those cards being really, really important. And then when you look at some of the other decks that Adnan's rocked, he's really loved going to that Golden Knight, Magic Archer plus Drill deck. That's something that could be a possibility. But, you know, who knows? Who knows at this point? Pandora, though, really struggling in this set against Adnan. Taking a look one more time at what is available for Adnan and what maybe Pandora has liked to play. Pandora has had success with Mortar Archer Queen, Hog EQ. He's had success with the Goblin Drill NATO deck with Magic Archer. You know, all of these decks are things that he's liked to lean to. I don't want to see him go anything super heavy. I don't think going to Lava Hound at this point would be a great idea, although I think it's still a better idea than going to something like Golem. I think Golem in this game 3 is a huge no-no for either of these guys. But it really is so much more about what can Pandora play to take advantage. And I think the best place to start is back at that Royal Hogs Royal Recruits deck. I think you were saying you agree. There's just so much there that can get a lot of value now that all of that spell power is out for Adnan. And then when you think about the spell power that is available, you know, not having the log and not having the barrel, not having fireball, lightning isn't going to get much value, arrows isn't going to get much value, so it's going to be a big question mark on, does Adnan think about that? And if he does, what does he want to play to maybe counter the counter that could come out for Royal Hogs plus Royal Recruits? I really hope that's what we see, though.
Absolutely, and it sounds like we have a couple replays that we can check out right now.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. And yeah, you know, it really will be interesting to see what he wants to go in Game 3, how he wants to set that up. But right here, 35 seconds left, Dark Prince comes down, solid defense, and right there was, I think, the moment where he used the mirror, so I don't know if production was trying to do that on purpose. And yeah, you know, E-Giant's coming down, but these Inferno Towers were just placed so well. I think right here is where he catches the Inferno Dragon with the Inferno Tower. So yeah, it was just brilliant throughout this game.
And then you see there the Inferno Tower kind of getting lost in translation, lost in the mix, or excuse me, the Inferno Dragon just doesn't know where to go. That Dark Prince connects on top of the tower, nothing to soak up that Dark Prince push. However, this got really dicey for a moment. That E-Giant, while it does look like it's just a sliver of health, you can see how much that damage stacks up, but the Royal Delivery comes in just in time. As you can see right there, the dash was not ready to go for a moment for Pandora, gets the dash in late, and then has a great catch here on top of that miner. And so Adnan goes, man, I can't quite just end this game. I need to play defense first. You said it on broadcast. Here comes the Earthquake, mirrored Earthquake, but not enough elixir in hand to get them both out early enough. That Inferno gets a ton of value. Miner goes back in with poison. Pandora doesn't even defend. He knows what's going to happen there as that poison ticks away, and that is a nice game win for Adnan. Game 2 in the books. We're getting ready for game number 3. They only have a certain amount of time allotted, so those guys are using every second of that time to make sure they're making the best choice with their decks, which is truly, I mean, if ever there was a game that should be won by Pandora, it's this game. He needs to be able to look at all the things that are not available, and he has to put together at least, in my opinion, at the very least, a 65-35 matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things. There's so much potential for it, and it's like I can think of 3 or 4 different decks that I think will just automatically hit that mark. Will automatically have that 65-35. I totally agree with you. I do not want to see a heavy deck, and we are getting exactly that. We're gonna have bait up top, and then Adnan could not be running RG, could not be running.
I think it's Golem, man. I really do.
It's Golem. Wow.
Yeah, which, you know, not the best call there, although not the best barrel either. You have to expect that if he's running Golem with Baby Dragon, you're going to see Tornado. And you see right there that Tornado already activating King Tower early on, which is one of the best advantages that Pandora was going to have in the game. So maybe a safe barrel would have been the better call early. The one good thing that Pandora has is a very fast cycle, great single target DPS, and of course that ability for the Mighty Miner to stack and sizzle, because it's not going to be an E-Giant win condition. It's not going to be a Lava Hound win condition.
Dark Goblin is able to take it out and take out the Bomber as well, while staying alive with a sliver of HP, forces out a Baby Dragon in response. And so I don't think he has, oh, he does have the Fire Spirit still in cycle, so he's going to be able to defend that fairly easily. 500 HP separating the 2 players, and so Cannon plus Mighty Miner is going to put in a lot of work against this Golem. But, you know, we talk about all the negatives with Golem. As long as this one has Lightning, Adnan should be in a fairly okay spot in terms of trying to get that damage. The Lightning will put in work on the Mighty Miner as well as the Cannon and allow his Golem to actually make it to the tower for once.
And this could still be Electro Giant. It just feels like with the Mega Minion in there that it should be Golem. And there is the Golem finally coming out, and Adnan doing the correct thing here, which is that's why we saw the Baby Dragon come out on top of that sliver HP Dark Goblin. It's just mitigate as much damage as you can in single elixir. Then once it gets into double elixir, that's where it's more his game to play, his game to win. And now you see a cannon going opposite lane to get on top of that cannon card, or cannon card going the opposite lane to get on top of the cannon, excuse me. There is the Lightning, so great call there on the Lightning NATO use here for Adnan. But the bait barrels are going to stack up, and these tricky barrels, if you will, inside, outside. You understand the idea when barrels in play, but it's also giving the opportunity for Adnan to be able to defend with not having to spend a lot of elixir and not taking a lot of damage.
One thing I do want to point out, which is quite impressive, is that the first two decks that Adnan used did not have NATO. He set himself up for success, where in games 3, 4, and 5, your opponent does have to worry about that. And that is special to have NATO still available to you. Yes, you don't have poison. Yes, you don't have fireball. But NATO is one of those cards where if that is available to you, that does limit the amount of decks that you have that could potentially be used. And I just love what he's doing there. What I don't love, these barrels that are continuing to not be on top of the tower. It allows the bombers to take it out easily.
Yeah, and then you see another barrel coming down this time. This time does surround the tower. No NATO comes down. One bomber still alive, and that bomber stays alive past that log. And the cannon cart comes down to assist. Fire Spirit gets cleaned off the board. Bomber stays alive much longer. Pandora has to overspend on that, but now another barrel coming down the lane, 1194, and this is, again, what we're talking about. These barrels need to be spread around the tower. You can see how much more effective they are there. And while I don't love the Golem choice, and I said I don't want to see Golem out from either of them, I will at least commend Adnan to going, all right, even if I lose this game, which is a game that I can lose, Pandora literally has to win 3 games in a row. The good thing about it is look at what's still available, even with the loss. NATO's still available. Golden Knight's still available. Cannon Cart's still available. So there is the potential for that Golden Knight, NATO, Magic Archer drill deck to be played by Adnan in Game 4. And as we said, a must-win game number 3 for Pandora goes to one of the 2 options that we thought with Bait or Royal Recruits plus Royal Hogs. Now that Pandora has a game win, though, and he can no longer use Cannon, he can no longer use Log, I still think he should go to Royal Recruits, Royal Hogs now in game number 4. He went to one of the 2 decks we thought he should use. He goes Bait instead of Royal Hogs. Now that Bait's unavailable, I do think you go to Recruits Hogs.
And so it's interesting. Okay, so not only do I just like the deck choice overall, but Bait in dual format is broken if you can get even an okay matchup, because you're not using barrel, you're not using you are using Dark Goblin, but you are not using the Goblin barrel, and you are not using the princess, if the princess is used, or any even Cannon sometimes is used, but I don't know if we've seen Cannon besides the time where it was the Cannon E-Giant Mirror deck, and you just use Mirror, so you can't even use that deck. So a lot of the cards that you use in Bait, you're not going to be using in other decks.
Yeah.
And, that is one of the things that we saw in game number 3. No Fireball, no Poison. It limits what you can use, and it allows your opponent to really work with that. Game 4, game 5, Adnan still doesn't have that advantage. We just know he's not using Dark Goblin, and we know he's not using Bait.
Yeah, and then, the other part that we can kind of throw into the mix here, being up here, again, the luxury of looking at what happened in the game and going, oh, well, this is what could have happened and should have happened, even though there's no way to kind of figure out that until after the game is over. This would have been a moment where I think actually the old school Golem deck with Night Witch would have been much more effective. You think about what spells were going to be in either of the 2 decks that you and I talked about. In this Bait deck, it's always going to be Rocket, right? It's always going to be that Mirror Rocket combination. And then on the other side of it, with that Royal Hogs, Royal Recruits deck, you would assume that he would probably go to Bar Barrel and Arrows or something of that sort. So that means the Night Witch is going to get a lot more value than it would have normally at the beginning of a dual mode format. And even though the Night Witch Golem combination isn't as popular, it could have been a good moment for Adnan to maybe take advantage of what he thought he was going to run into. And those bats really would have gotten a lot of value. The Dark Goblin's still going to be a problem, but I do think it just helps support that Golem a little bit more, makes it just a little bit scarier. Whereas with the matchup he was in, with the Cannon, with the Dark Goblin, with the Mirrored Cannon, with the Mighty Miner, that Golem was just in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. And it's not the most difficult thing ever when you're running a 2.9 elixir cycle deck, especially when one of your cards is a hero, so then it's really like a 2.5 elixir deck. But I loved how he always had the double cannon set up. He always had the Mighty Miner cycled in the back to get the value that he needed. And the Mighty Miner, it's just such an interesting hero, because I don't think he ever used his ability once, and that is weird to think about when we're thinking about champions.
So Bomber out here for Pandora early on. Spear is not too popular this weekend. Kind of come out for Adnan. Mighty Miner. And that is not what you want to see. An immediate freeze comes out to make sure that Mighty Miner will be able to get at least a little bit of damage in. But the freeze doesn't last long enough. The Inferno Dragon is in that range of the Electro Giant. Inferno Dragon of Pandora is behind, and already a very bad start for Adnan.
Yeah, brilliant right there. NATO is going to come in. Oh my goodness, Inferno Dragon. Freeze is not going to be enough. I don't know. It doesn't matter that he froze. We're still taking that tower if you're Pandora.
Yeah, that is just a very, very rough start there. You recognize why Adnan went for that freeze to help the Mighty Miner take out the Electro Giant, but I think it was one of those situations where he was committing way too much to a defense that just was not going to work out. And then you add all of that plus the Inferno Dragon being dropped right inside the Electro Giant's radius, and Adnan doing what he needs to do here, which is just, I need to sit back, let this game go. He decides to finally play a Mighty Miner in the opposite direction, Inferno Dragon down on the right-hand side, and I think he's literally just playing at this point. He knows he's not going to win. And then you add in the Mother Witch in the back. That's doesn't even matter at this point, but it just is a little bit of insult to injury, just going, hey, man, even if this game didn't shake down the way it did in the first 30 seconds, you still would have had a very difficult time to win game number 4.
Wow, and just like that, all the momentum goes for Pandora. It is incredible how this has flipped completely on its head. I mean, it really was, can Adnan get the 3-0? That was the question that was going through my mind. And now it's, can Adnan win? And it really feels like the big MO, the momentum is all for Pandora at this point.
Yeah, I really don't like the fact that we saw Mighty Miner in this matchup from Adnan. Electro Giant still in play. Yes, some of the supporting cards around Electro Giant weren't available for Pandora, but there's still enough. And with how strong E-Giant is, I think going to Mighty Miner in game number 4 with it still available is just not the way you want to go. I think the potential for E-Giant to be played is so high that the Mighty Miner is just such a... you're just really hamstringing yourself. It's just kind of you setting yourself up for failure. Yes, it's a good card. Yes, it can be effective, but not when you have E-Giant as a potential card to still play against. So this guy's is really seeing this Royale Masters duel format come to fruition for Pandora specifically. Adnan needs to be thinking a little bit more in depth. He needs to maybe get a little bit more help from his analysts, because what looked like you said, Josh, would be a 3-0 set for Adnan. Pandora now, with all the momentum, all the confidence in his favor, and the experience, this is now anybody's game. We're back to a best of 1 for that number 1 spot here at our grand finals.
Okay, let me just list off the cards and the decks that are available to Pandora at this point. Fireball, Poison, Barbarrel, Zap, RG. There was like one special one that I was thinking of, but I can't think of it anymore. Basically, he has everything available to him. No E-Giant, no bait. But, I mean, besides the Tornado, and besides the Fire Spirit Dart Goblin and Log, he has everything available to him, and Adnan instead is the exact opposite. Game number 4, and he uses a deck that has Inferno Dragon, Mighty Miner, Bomber, Mortar, Spear Goblins, Graveyard. That should never, I mean, that really shouldn't happen in competitive. You shouldn't be so constricted where you think that is the best deck for a game number 4. Like that just shouldn't be an answer.
Let's take a look here at that very first push that kind of sealed the deal for both of these players in favor of Pandora. So we see the Mighty Miner working down the lane, and then AC, this goes off the rails almost instantaneously.
Yeah, the freeze just isn't going to last long enough. You know, maybe if this is ladder, that's an okay play. But instead, you know, with the tournament format, it just doesn't last long enough. Bomber, I mean, great recognition from Pandora, does not use the ability. Instead, the Spear Goblins are placed high, and it doesn't even matter. I mean, even if he had waited for the ability, used it on the Spear Goblins, Inferno Dragon still would have locked. And right here, again, another mistake. Tower's gone. I tell this to my, like, the students that I coach, you know, recognize when a tower is gone, and right there, he still ends up spending another 9 elixirs, Spear Goblins, Freeze, and Arrows on an already dead tower.
And you understand maybe why the Inferno Dragon was played where it was for Trainer Adnan, just thinking, all right, the freeze isn't going to last long enough. You guys are right, but it will be long enough if that sizzle from the Inferno Dragon and the drill kind of ramping up can both stack on top of that E-Giant before that freeze is finished. But the problem there is that it just was too late. So maybe instead he goes to the inside with the Inferno Dragon. That way it's still far enough away from the E-Giant, but then it probably gets NATO'd on top of the E-Giant. The only thing that you can take away from that is that, okay, well, at least that NATO is used, so now the Inferno Dragon can't be played offensively behind the E-Giant plus Golden Knight push. I think a big part of it, too, was the patience of Pandora with that Golden Knight dash. That was really, really nice stuff there, kind of expecting all the worst to come out and then the Golden Knight getting on tower. But I just really didn't love the placement of that Inferno Dragon. I don't know if there was a better spot for it. Maybe it just needed to be a different card, but that was just not the move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the cases where they just, you know, one of the players wasn't really thinking ahead. I mean, even in the original push, you place the Mighty Miner on the outside, and then you get the Inferno Dragon on the inside, and then you get to spread out the troops. But instead, the troops are too close together. If you do them both on the inside, then you can NATO away or NATO into, and it does provide a lot of, you know, difficult situations for you. And, you know, we saw just how difficult it was with the 25-second lasting game.
And I think one of the other things to kind of add on to this is that Pandora still has a lot available. So he just won with E-Giant, NATO, Lightning, Goblin Cage, Golden Knight, Mother Witch, Inferno Dragon, and Bomber. And then in the previous game, he played Bait with Mirror and Mighty Miner. So he still has Archer Queen available, still has Giant Skeleton available. He could still go to, and Skeleton King. He could go to a form of Hog EQ if he wanted, although Log not being available makes that a little bit more difficult. That Log can be really, really important. Adnan on the other side of it, you know, he doesn't have miners, so Mortar doesn't seem like a very good play anymore. He also just lost to E-Giant, so Mortar also doesn't seem as enticing of a play. I still would love to see Pandora try to abuse the spells that are available and go to those Royal Hogs. And then on Adnan's side of it, it's really difficult because he has put himself in a bit of a tough position here moving forward. I'm not exactly sure what the best option is to come out here in game number 5.
Yeah, it's it's genuinely enjoyable to talk about the possibilities that Pandora has for game number 5. It is absolutely miserable to think about what Adnan can do. It is insane that it is two different sides of the coin right there. Pandora still has, you know, the Royal Hogs. I mean, Royal Hogs would have won game number 3, it would have won game number 4, and it'll probably win game number 5. Adnan, on the other hand, it doesn't matter if games 3 and 4 were switched when it comes to the deck choices. He would have lost them both. I mean, really, no, it doesn't make sense how he's used every single card. And when in game number 2, one of my callouts was, oh, and then he's got the Rocket, he's going to be able to finish out the game. And instead it was Poison. Had it been Rocket, he would have so many more things available to him. He would be able to use the Poison, and that would allow him so many more opportunities to prosper in games 3, 4, and 5. So really, my mistake right there, it really would have been the right choice. And it truly is not fun to think about what he's going to use in game number 5.
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
If I'm the analyst, I quit.
Yeah. I mean, it really felt like Adnan went for more of a sellout run to pick games maybe 2, 1, 2, and 4 is a worst case scenario, but now getting into game 5, a much more difficult spot. The other thing that is still available for Pandora is that really popular Royal Hogs or Hog Rider deck with Earthquake and Archer Queen. So there's a lot out there available, and it looks like Pandora decides to go to Bandit, Royal Ghost, Zap. So I think this is what, maybe the, oh no, I was going to say the Wall Breakers Mega Knight version, but instead we see a Battle Ram come out, and then Adnan comes out with the Bowler. So Bowler going to be a good response to every card that we've seen thus far played by Pandora.
There's no possible way, but there is a, I mean, we could be potentially seeing P.E.K.K.A, but it just feels so incorrect to say that I'm scared to do so. We see the Bandit get the dash. Magic Archer should lock on. No E was placed just yet. But oh my goodness, we are going to be seeing P.E.K.K.A in this matchup. I did not expect to see something like that.
Yeah, I think we've only seen P.E.K.K.A one other time. I think it was like a P.E.K.K.A mortar deck. Maybe we saw it twice, and I'm forgetting yesterday. But yeah, a very interesting pull here on the P.E.K.K.A if that is the card. It's one of those last 2 cards. The other one most likely going to be a big spell. And then in terms of that value of the P.E.K.K.A, it's going to struggle against the guards. But the good thing is that it can put in a lot of work on that Bowler and Golden Knight. So we'll see exactly how Adnan wants to play this. You know, the freeze is a good thing for Adnan to have because he's going to be able to freeze that Electro Wizard if it does come down on top of the Inferno. We shall see. We shall see. Nice P.E.K.K.A there to keep this Magic Archer alive, and exactly like we said, freeze does come down.
And that was really interesting. I thought he was going to allow the Magic Archer just to get more shots on top of the tower. Not the case. Good defense overall from Pandora, and that's a somewhat expensive. If it gets the second shot, then it's a beautiful play, and it does. So now I get to say beautiful play from Adnan. And right here, guards are not in cycle, forced to use the freeze, and the Bandit might get the dash. It might not.
Wow.
We see it get the dash. 1557, lowest tower for Adnan.
And that is not only is that a rough draw there for Adnan, but that's also a huge confidence moment where Adnan definitely felt that pain come in. The wasted freeze comes down. Bandit still gets a dash. Lowest tower on the board is now his. But Pandora keeping up the pressure. Bowler going to put in a ton of work in the left-hand lane. Meanwhile, P.E.K.K.A working towards that right-hand tower. He was behind on top of the Inferno. Now the lineup of the Magic Archer, but the Bowler ball pushes it back, still gets the lineup. But Magic Archer does not stay alive as long, and now a GY comes in for Adnan as those Skellies stack up. Zap does come in, but that Inferno getting a lot of value on the back end.
This NATO could be dangerous. Are we going to see it? E was placed up top. Absolutely a necessary play. 1155, 757, 400 HP separating the 2 players. And the Bowler again gets the bull on top of multiple troops every single time. I've been worried that it wasn't going to get it. We see the graveyard push again. All of a sudden, Adnan has all the momentum in the world.
That's right. Magic Archer is in the back playing cleanup, but not doing a great job. Zap comes in. That's going to do it. Last Skeleton stays alive, 74 HP. There's the NATO. Adnan with a little bit of BM, and we have our champion of our Open Qualifiers, #1. It was It Hurts all day long yesterday. We had no idea who it was, trying to figure it out. At the very end of our Open Qualifier Swiss bracket, we were like, oh, it's Trainer Adnan. And from that moment on, it has just been non-stop wins for this guy, one of the few players that was a true standout yesterday, going 8-0 with an 84% win rate. Keeps that run going all throughout our bracket today. He's able to take out the Lost, Higher, Inthrill, and then now in our finals, takes down Pandora. What a glorious run for this incredible player.
Absolutely, all the credit in the world. He played a phenomenal, wow. Okay, so he beat the Lost 2-1, he beat Higher 2-1, he beat Inthrill 2-1, he beat Pandora 3-2. When it comes to the final game, that man undefeated. You know, I don't know if it was he let Pandora catch up just because he knew that he was going to win, so it didn't really matter. But as soon as it gets to the final game, he turns it up. And that is what you want in a champion. Someone where the clutch time doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
Clutch time, crunch time, doesn't even matter. He's going to win it. Congratulations to trainer Adnan.
That is such a great point that you make there, AC. This shows that mental fortitude that you have to be at the top of that totem pole in terms of Clash Royale. Not only was he perfect yesterday through all 8 of his rounds, that's 8 best of 3s. He continued on through the day today, adding 3 more best of 3s, 1 best of 5. And again, to that point that you made, it is so exceptional when someone can go to the final game time after time after time, especially in a best of 5, that all of a sudden looks like you might be getting reverse swept, puts it together in the final game with a very interesting deck. He had painted himself in a quarter with the cards that were still available. Freeze did him dirty in game number 4. He goes, all right, maybe it wasn't the freeze, maybe it was me. Let's go back to the freeze. And then you saw how well he used it in game number 5. And what an exceptional weekend for trainer Adnan, who is back in the mix and back on top.
Yeah, game number 5. I loved what he did there. That was a perfect deck choice. You have the guards available to you. You have the bowler potential, and you know, whenever you're in those weird spots, graveyard is kind of the direction you want to go. And so just great, you know, recognition that is always going to give him a chance. On the other side, I'm interested to see why Pandora chose to use the P.E.K.K.A. Ewiz deck that hasn't been in the meta for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of an odd choice, and I will say it, I think Royal Recruit's Flying Machine would have had a good matchup in that game number 5.
Yeah, I mean, look at what was available for Adnan spell-wise. How would he have been able to get on top of those Flying Machines? You know, it would have been a really, really difficult task to pull off when you're talking about what was played in that game. NATO plus freeze, so it's all about getting those baby dragons and infernos on top of the flying machines. That would have been the way that I love to see, but it's not the way it shook down. Let's take a look here at our leaderboard. Yes, this matters to win the Open Qualifier 1, but what matters more are the points that you got from the day. It Hurts taking away 15, Pandora taking away 12, Furkan at 10, then 8 for Inthrill, and then 6 for everyone else that was here. As you guys can see, even though he wins, he still only takes a 3-point advantage over 2nd place and a 5-point advantage over 3rd place. So this is, again, why these Open Qualifiers are so very important. And AC, we have a couple more Open Qualifiers, don't we?
I'm pretty sure. Wait, I think I remember hearing every single weekend for the entire month of July. Was that it?
That's right. Every single weekend we have Open Qualifiers and, of course, our Last Chance Qualifier. Next weekend will be Qualifier 2. It'll be the exact same thing that you guys saw today. Open Swiss bracket with who knows how many people involved, right? There was other events going on this weekend, so there's a lot of names that we didn't see in this competition that we thought we might. I mean, there was still a handful, a massive amount of pros that were in this competition, but still, more names can be in the mix. Even you, that's right. This is the era of everyone. Check out RoyaleMSTRS on Twitter, on Discord. Join that Discord. Figure out when you can join that Open Qualifier, and also all the information is there in the Discord. They're very on top of keeping you guys informed when you need to sign up, when signups are closed, when you need to be at your devices ready to go for the brackets, when groups are starting, when groups are ending. So go follow RoyaleMSTRS everywhere that you can. Subscribe to this channel here, turn on notifications so that you know every single time that we go live over the next 4 weeks. That's right, 3 weeks Open Qualifiers, and of course the Last Chance Qualifier, and then our grand finals where $25,000 will be given away. AC, any of your final closing thoughts on what we saw this weekend?
You know, there's a lot of different players that I am going to be following now because of this competition. So that is brilliant. It, you know, it's special that we got to see that. It makes me want to sign up for the next qualifier myself, get back in the action.
I'm glad you're saying that. I'm glad you're saying that because the Open Qualifiers are open right now. Open Qualifiers, Open Qualifier 2 registration is open. So get your name in the mix, throw your name in the hat. Maybe AC will join up. Maybe you'll run into him early on in your run in the bracket, which is not what you want to see. We saw a lot of great pros show up this weekend that fell just a little bit short. Diego B, Katashian, Air Surfer. But then we saw the other side of it with Pandora, trainer Adnan, The Lost was in the mix as the highest win rate that came out of that open bracket, but was not able to work through this absolutely grueling single elimination best of 3 days. So that is going to wrap it up for us this week. We'll be back every single week, same time, same place here on the Royale Masters. For Joshua, AC Sharon, I'm Andrew Guy. Big shout out to Tasty Bacon in the booth, and all the love in the world to Royale Masters for putting together this incredible $50,000 gold ticket event. We'll catch you guys in a week. Keep on clashing.